starting us off at number 10 is The Boy in the Box. Back in 1957 in Philadelphia, the case of America's unknown child emerged. The boy was actually found many times before actually being reported to the police. First by a man checking his animal traps, and he refused to report it because he was scared the police would confiscate his traps. Like, hello, priorities, there is a little boy dead there. Forget about your traps. Either way, he was then found by a college student who did end up reporting it the next day. When police finally came to investigate, they found a 4 or 5-year-old naked boy wrapped in a blanket in a cardboard box. His hair had been cut possibly after he died, since clumps of it were still on his body. He was severely malnourished and had suspicious surgical scars on his groin, ankle, and chin. There were bruises all over his body, and a cap and a handkerchief were found near his body, the latter which also had an M engraved onto it. Clues, we like clues. No one came forward with any information, but a psychic led them straight to a foster home nearby. Police started speculating the kid had been the son of the owner's stepdaughter. Perhaps the both of them got rid of his body because the daughter was unwed, and so it was just to save her reputation, perhaps, because the kid was her son. Because I mean, it was the 50s, unwed, with a baby, that's not a good look, is it? Another theory was that the M could have been a woman called Martha who said her abusive mum had bought the boy from his birth parents 3 years prior. He was abused thoroughly, and one night he didn't eat his dinner, and so the mum slammed his head against the floor till he became unconscious. She then gave him a bath, during which he died. Martha said she helped her mum dump the body, yet Martha herself had a history of mental illness, so it was hard to believe her story or whether it was even real or if it even happened. So really, we just will never know what happened to the boy in the box. Coming in at number 9 is the incident at Dyatlov Pass. So back in February of 1959, 9 ski hikers went on a trip in the Ural Mountains of present-day Russia. On their last night, they had set up camp near a slope and had had dinner before going to bed. It was a routine trip, yet the group never arrived at their final destination, and their fate was never solved. A rescue party was sent out on the 26th, and they managed to find the group's tent. It had somehow been ripped open from the inside, and the outside of it had footprints everywhere. Some were wearing socks, others were wearing a single shoe, some weren't wearing any shoes at all in the freezing weather, which was just suspicious. The party followed the prints, which led them into finding the first 2 bodies. Both were only wearing underwear, and that's literally it. No shoes, no jacket, nothing. Initially, medics thought the cause of death was hypothermia, but as the remaining 7 bodies were found over the next few months, hypothermia just started to make less and less sense. One autopsy showed evidence of blunt force trauma like you'd have in a brutal assault. The person's skull was just completely fractured. 2 of the other bodies had major chest fractures, and to put it into perspective, to cause someone that much damage, the impact would have had to be equivalent to that of a car crash. That is a lot of impact. A lot of damage. Now, the 3 bodies had no external wounds to explain their fractured bones, so how did it happen? One of the bodies with the fractured chest was also missing her tongue, eyes, and lips. Another body just had a really high level of radiation on their clothes, whilst the rest of the group did actually die of hypothermia. But the reason what rushed the group out of their tents inadequately dressed that morning remains a mystery. Speculations include some kind of UFO attack, an attack from the indigenous Mansi people, and maybe even a military test gone wrong. Who knows? At number 8, we have the satanic beheading. Now, back in Feb of 1981, Leroy Carter Jr. was walking through Golden Gate Park looking for a place to sleep. He found a spot near Alvord Lake, got his sleeping bag out, and just hit the hay. The next day, police found Carter's body dead, but there was one thing that made his death stand out, and that was he was decapitated. That feature pointed to a ritual or some voodoo being involved in his death, but background investigation into his life showed no links to the occult whatsoever. His neck was sliced through cleanly, and a chicken wing and 2 corn cobs were found stuffed into his neck. Around his body, police found the mutilated remains of multiple dead chickens, so ritualistic sacrifice was all they could think of. After consulting an expert, their theories pointed towards Santeria, which is an Afro-Caribbean religion based on Yoruba traditions and beliefs. Sacrifice plays a major role in their religion, but most rituals involve chickens, not humans, but some underground sects still seek out human victims. After research, investigators figured that the killer had to be back 42 days later to place the head back, and so forces staked out the park as the day approached, yet the killer managed to come and go without being detected. The ritual complete, the culprit was never found, and Leroy's murder was never solved. Filling our number 7 slot are the Salish foot discoveries. This one is just so weird, I don't even get how we haven't figured it out yet, but since the summer of 2007 till now, people have found a total of 20 detached human feet on the coast of the Salish Sea. A Canadian officer claimed that foul play had been ruled out and that the feet must be from either people killed in accidents or by suicide because all the feet had detached via normal decomposition process. Most of the feet were found actually wearing sneakers, which kept them floating and relatively preserved. After the 5th foot was found, the incident started getting a lot more international media attention because, I mean, it's just plain weird. The latest foot that was found was on the 1st of January this year, and they actually did a DNA test and identified the man to have been missing since 2016. So I mean, here's the deal, we're finding a bunch of feet, we don't really know if foul play was involved or not every time, and I suspect we're just gonna continue finding these feet, and that's gonna be that. Now at number 6 is the story of Pauline Picard. Back in April of 1922, 2-year-old Pauline disappeared from her family farm in France. After search parties yielded no results, Pauline's parents were still hopeful they'd find their baby girl, and they did, or so they thought. Weeks later, a girl matching Pauline's description was seen in Cherbourg, and her mother identified her and went to get her. But after spending 2 hours with Pauline, the parents realized the girl looked exactly like their daughter, but she wasn't her. She didn't recognize her parents, nor did she behave like Pauline. Either way, they still took her home, hoping her memories would return and maybe this was just amnesia. When she got home, even her siblings recognized her as Pauline, and no one was really talking about the fact she was found 200 miles away from her house and how the hell she got there. Like, are we just not gonna talk about that? Elephant in the room much. Either way, Pauline didn't even speak in her native dialect, but as time went on, the parents said she was becoming herself again. But the good news ended quickly because fast forward a month, a cyclist found a body of a little girl near the family's farm, and it was in bad shape. Decomposed as hell, and the hands, feet and head were all missing, and next to the body was a folded outfit. Pauline's mum recognized the clothes as being the same ones Pauline wore the day she went missing, and the location the body was found was searched many times previously, indicating the body had been left there quite recently. Near her body was an adult male head, which clearly did not belong to the decomposed body. So we literally have an imposter girl living on the farm now who isn't Pauline but could be her doppelganger. We have actual Pauline dead near the farm, and we have a random male head. Like, what is happening at this point? How has none of this been solved? Like, where's Pauline? Who is this twin Pauline? Pauline! Coming in at number 5 are the noises. Back in December of 2016, a CIA officer went to the health office in Havana after apparently feeling nauseous, dizzy, and having a headache. Which is, I mean, fair enough, people get sick in the winter, it's no biggie. But 2 days later, 2 other CIA officers reported the same thing. 2 years later, this number had grown to 39 officers, and each victim claimed the symptoms had been triggered by a bizarre noise they'd heard in their hotel rooms or their homes. One claimed it was very high-pitched, almost like a beam of sound had just been pointed into their room. Another person said it was like the sound marbles make when they roll across the floor. The CIA was completely blindsided by this because they hadn't developed any weapon or knew of any weapon that could cause these symptoms, and if anyone would have known about it, it would have been the CIA. Some of the victims had even recorded the sound, but that just made things worse. Scientists analyzing the sound said they were insects, but how could insects lead to symptoms like that? It just doesn't add up. In May of last year, an American worker posted in the US consulate in China was diagnosed with the same thing, so no one knows what's happening, but CIA agents are dropping like flies, which may not even be a bad thing. They have done some pretty messed up throughout the years, just saying. At number 4 is the Tunguska event, and I'm pretty sure I said that wrong, I'm sorry. So back in 1908, 770 square miles of forest in Siberia was just spontaneously flattened by some explosion of some kind, except there was no evidence of an explosion and absolutely no witnesses. Scientists called it the largest impact event in history, and an impact event is basically an impact between 2 astronomical objects, aka an asteroid and the Earth. Except with an impact event, there's usually an impact crater, which there wasn't. Scientists have only been able to speculate what happened, like maybe an asteroid exploded over the Earth, not on it, and the resulting explosion was just the after effect. Maybe it was the airburst of a meteoroid, we literally have no clue. There were just a bunch of forests that got flattened, and we're just gonna leave it at that, apparently. Filling our number 3 slot are the Hinterkaifeck murders. Back in March of 1922, in Weidhofen, Germany, the 7 people living on the Hinterkaifeck farm were all found dead. But things were already getting creepy leading up to the incident. Days beforehand, the maid of the family quit, claiming she felt the house was haunted. The father found a bizarre newspaper in the house that no one had bought, and he had also found footprints leading to their machine room outside, yet no one was in there and no one had gone in there. At night, the family would hear footsteps in the attic despite finding no one there, and so a ghost inhabitant was very much possible. The new maid Maria arrived, and that day 4 family members were believed to have been lured to the family barn and then murdered by a mattock. The killer then went into the house where he killed 3 more people, and all the bodies were discovered a full 4 days after the murders. The family failed to show up at church, the kids were absent from school, and the postman realized the family's mail had been there from a few days ago. Eventually, the village guide went to the house and entered the barn and found the bodies. During the investigation, the weapon was nowhere to be found, and after the autopsies were done, they found out that one of the children was actually alive for hours after her assault. She had pulled out her hair in tufts while laying in the straw in her own blood. People speculate someone actually did kill everyone, whereas others think it could have been the ghostly presence that had something to do with it. Honestly, who knows? I feel like it could have been a possession of some kind, because why would the little girl be pulling out her hair after she was assaulted? Like, unless she was possessed? I don't know. Now at number 2 are the Circleville letters. At the end of the 1700s, the citizens of Circleville, Ohio were under attack by a serial author. Locals around town started getting anonymous letters filled with intimate details about their lives and how the author was supposedly watching them. The worst victim of this was a woman called Mary Giuseppe. She was the bus driver of one of the schools and was having an affair with the superintendent. The letter said things like, "I know where you live, I can hurt your children," and soon after, Mary's husband Ron even got a letter about it, and soon the whole town was rife with rumors. 2 weeks later, she got another letter saying she'd done nothing since the last one and that she had to inform the school board, otherwise the author would expose her on CBS and etc. Why are they going to that much effort to expose her? I don't understand. The letters then stopped till Ron got a call which infuriated him so much he left the house with a gun, got into his car, and never came back. His car was found crashed into a tree, Ron was dead, and the gun had been fired, yet the receiver of that bullet is still a mystery. Mary and the superintendent ended up getting married later on, and the writer was hell-bent on embarrassing her by posting signs and posters of it all around town. Like, this guy really has it for her. One time she got so frustrated she went to rip off a poster and found it attached to a string, which she followed and was led to a box with a gun pointing right at her. The gun got traced to her brother-in-law Paul, and he was put in jail for being the writer. Case closed, everyone in town breathed a sigh of relief now that the guy had been caught, yet while he was in jail, Paul received his own letter. And nothing's been solved ever since. And finally, at number 1 is Susan Powell. Now this case has so many twists and turns, I was struggling to keep up, but here goes nothing, you guys better keep up. Susan disappeared on the 6th of December back in 2009, and a decade later is yet to be found. Susan was married to a man named Joshua, and the couple had 2 kids, but there were marital problems, they were intense, and they were plenty. Susan and the 2 boys went to church on the 6th, and the whole family were reported missing the next day. Police broke into the house to find nothing out of the blue except 2 fans blowing a newly cleaned couch dry. Joshua came home that same day with the boys, saying he had taken the boys camping while Susan was asleep and had just returned. Now here's where things get sus. Now why the hell would Joshua take his kids camping after midnight in the winter when he's meant to be at work hours later? Not only that, but when the couple initially got married, they lived in Joshua's family home where his dad Stephen grew an infatuation with Susan. He would follow her around, record her, steal her underwear, etc. And she even wrote in her will that her death may not be an accident even though it looks like one. When police started investigating, they found no evidence of the camp Joshua described. They found Susan's phone in his van, they found Susan's blood on the floor of the house, and at this point Josh is looking like the culprit 100%. When police spoke to one of the sons, he said that the camping trip did happen, but their mum had gone with them but hadn't come back with them. The other younger son kept drawing pictures of a van at daycare and kept saying mommy was in the trunk of the van. Josh tried to play the whole thing off by saying Susan was having an affair and the 2 had run off to Brazil to be together. That turned out out to be false, and Stephen, Joshua's dad, claimed the two had been in love before she disappeared. Like, these people are throwing Susan under the bus left, right, and center, and she's not even alive to defend herself. Police arrested Stephen after finding a bunch of child pornography and tapes of girls that didn't know they were being filmed, including Susan, on his laptop. Her family were all sure that Joshua had something to do with her disappearance, but the case remains unsolved and her body remains missing.
Coming in at number 10, we have the sleeping sickness. Encephalitis lethargica is a bizarre sickness that swept first across Europe and then the wider world in the winter of 1916 before it disappeared in the 1930s. It was awful and fatal. In around 12 years, 500,000 people were affected, with a third of them dying. Even those who survived were left as hollow shells of humans who lay motionless for hours on end. At first, people got sleepy, and then they contracted a fever and found it hard to move. Eventually they'd fall unconscious, and many never woke up. The illness perplexed scientists, and to this day we still have no idea how the illness came about and how it spread. If it came around again today, we'd initially be none the wiser of what to do. Coming into number 9, we have the hum. Let me just preface this by saying that I love trumpets. I am making a snap decision right now to straight up say that trumpets are my favourite instruments because they're so good. Bring on the trumpets. It isn't just me who loves them though. Strange trumpet noises have been coming from the sky and nobody knows why. Ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you the hum. Trumpet sounds have been heard coming from the sky in many parts of the world for over a decade now. The noise kind of sounds like high school band practice and has been heard in Canada, the United States, Belarus, Sweden, the Ukraine, and Germany. It seems that the phenomena is officially termed the hum, and as of yet, scientists and geologists don't know what's causing it. NASA claims it's normal, saying that it's the Earth making natural radio emissions that sound strange to us. NASA said if humans had radio antennas instead of ears, we would hear remarkable symphonies of strange noises coming from our own planet. Maybe that explains it? I don't know. Scientists call them tweaks and whistlers. I don't know. Trumpets. Sky trumpets. Why? As it's nearly Halloween, I'm dressed kinda witchy today and I really want to go to Boston. I want to talk about the Salem witch trials at number 8. I suppose the mystery here is mass hysteria, but does that really explain why 200 people were accused of being witches and 19 people tried and killed for the crime? The deadliest witch hunt in history of colonial North America began when a group of teenage girls started accusing people of witchcraft. But then, some of the accused even started acting possessed and had fits and the like, and other people in the town would band together to say that they swore such and such was flying on a broomstick or cavorting with the devil. They swore! How bizarre. While some historians simply cite mass hysteria, some people think that it had something to do with bad bread. More specifically, an outbreak of rye ergo, a fungus that causes hallucinations. Ah, we've got a friend at number 7. It's Nessie. Oh, Nessie! Where you hiding, hen? It's my best Scottish accent, and I would like to apologise to the population of Scotland for that brazen attempt at even trying. Scotland. Nessie. Okay, enough. Maybe. So the Loch Ness Monster is an enduring mystery and of course a cryptozoology conspiracy that has been going strong for a long time. So long now that Loch Ness near Fort William in Scotland, one of my favourite places in the world, sees regular tourism from monster seekers. So setting aside the fame and drama, a lot of people have seen something strange in the lake in the Scottish Highlands. In 1933, George Spicer said that he and his wife saw a most extraordinary animal cross the road in front of their car. They were driving near the loch and, I mean, what was it? Apparently it had a long neck, a wavy kind of neck, and it was thick like an elephant's trunk. They described it as being around 4 feet. That same year, a motorcyclist said that they nearly run over something of the same description. In 1934, the infamous photograph emerged, and the rest, as they say, is history. The authenticity of the image is up for debate, but how do we explain the multiple sightings? There are a lot of Scottish mysteries, but this is perhaps the most enduring. reassuring. Coming into number 6, we have the Marfa Lights. What are the Marfa Lights? They're mysterious glowing orbs that have appeared in the desert outside of the Texas town of Marfa near Route 67. They've been mystifying people for over 136 years. The lights were recorded first in 1883, but First Nations groups had been aware of them for years. There have been around 5 sightings each year of the lights over the past 50 years, and as of yet nobody knows what causes them. Some people think they're ghosts, spirit orbs, others say they're atmospheric phenomena, we just don't know. More lights at number 5, we have ball lightning. Okay, hands up who loves the storm, because I really do. I get so excited by storms. I'm always like running to the window and opening it, or going out to the porch if I'm in a place that has a porch, and watching storms pass over because it's just so great. It's the theatre of nature and I am here for it. So we know what causes lightning, positive and negative imbalances within clouds or between clouds and the ground, but there is a strange phenomena called ball lighting, which scientists have been scratching their heads over. 1638 was the first known sighting of ball lighting, when a so-called Great Ball of Fire came through a window of a church in England. Yikes. Researchers from China accidentally recorded a ball lighting event whilst studying a 2012 thunderstorm using video cameras and spectrometers. They still don't even know what caused it though, even though they observed it. Here is more Corner Dashcam. Editor's clip. Coming into number 4, we have the Chicago Fire. The fire of 1871 was absolutely devastating. The city burned from the 8th to the 10th of October in 1871, and it left 100,000 people without homes. So what, or more to the point, who started it? The popular legend is that a cow owned by Irish immigrant Mrs. Catherine O'Leary started it. You may have even heard the song about it, but it is utter slander. Poor old Mrs. O'Leary never did it. She was a poor Irish Catholic immigrant, and she was made a scapegoat because at the time the US were very distrustful of Catholics. There was also a lot of Irish racism in this area around the time. Reportedly, Michael Earn of the Chicago Tribune was to blame for fanning the flames on Mrs. O'Leary's reputation, but it was already destroyed because people across the world are singing songs about her cow. She and the cow were pardoned by Chicago in 1997, but it was far too late for them. They were long dead. So if Mrs. O'Leary and her leggy cow weren't to blame, then who was? We don't know. It's still a mystery. Mystery or parallel universe? You decide at number 3 as we talk about Dorothy Eady, or Seti. Dorothy was born in Blackheath in London to Catholic Irish parents, and at the age of 3, she suffered a terrible fall down a flight of stairs. It should have killed her, but luckily she didn't die. She ended up in hospital, but in the time that followed, she started acting very strangely. How so? Well, she developed foreign accent syndrome and started ranting and raving about ancient Egypt, something that she'd never talked about before. At church, she was actually thrown out of her Catholic school for declaring her love for Osiris, the Egyptian god of the underworld and the judge of the dead. Her parents decided to take Dorothy to the British Museum, which is where it all kicked off. She saw a photograph of the New Kingdom Temple and loudly declared, "This is my home, but where are all the trees? Where's the garden?" Now it turned out the photograph was of the temple of Seti I, the father of Ramesses the Great. Dorothy became so absorbed by the museum that she met a keen Egyptologist and was encouraged to study ancient Egypt herself. She even moved to Egypt before the age of 30, and she changed her name to Seti. When she arrived, she kissed the ground and claimed that she'd come home to stay. This is when she started having visions. She said that she was visited by an apparition known as Hora. In hieroglyphics, she wrote 70 pages dictating her former life as a priestess of the Temple of Seti. Now this was done with scary accuracy. In an attempt to prove herself, she led archaeologists to a site in the Seti Temple ruins, and excavations uncovered things that fully matched her visions and descriptions. Seti died in 1981, and the New York Times hailed her as the most intriguing case of reincarnation. What happened at the Dyatlov Pass? You tell me! At number 2. We still don't know what went down on the evening of February the 1st and the morning of February the 2nd, 1959 in the northern Ural Mountains. A group of 9 cross-country skiers who were all experienced winter trekkers set up camp in the mountains, but by the morning, they were all dead. One body had evidence of a blunt force trauma consistent with a brutal assault. Another had third-degree burns. One had been vomiting blood. 6 of the group died of hypothermia. One of the group was missing their tongue and their eyes. Another of the group's clothing was found to be radioactive. Like, what? It seems that something in the night caused the group to tear out of their tents without proper clothing to face the sub-zero snowy climate. The Soviet authorities did investigate the suspicious deaths, but the case remains unsolved. Leading theories include an animal attack, an avalanche, infrasound panic, or assassination. Others say it could be paradoxical undressing from hypothermia, which causes people to act crazily. Some people even say that it could be aliens, and to be honest, it sounds like the most likely explanation, right? The area remained closed for investigation for 3 whole years, but it's now open, and it has been named the Dyatlov Pass in memoriam of the group leader. Recently, Russia have actually launched a new investigation into what happened, so maybe one day we'll find out. Finally, coming into number 1, we've got the universe. There is no bigger mystery than how the universe began, and I mean it's kind of mind-bending, right? If we truly knew how the universe began, it would help us understand our beginnings, sure, but it would also cause a lot of chaos. What if there isn't a god, and what if there is? What if there is a god but it's absolutely nothing like we imagined? While there are a number of atheists out there and agnostics like me, the majority of the world is actually religious. Right now a lot of the West believe in the Big Bang, even if we don't agree on what ignited it and what the implications are. But what if it wasn't a Big Bang? What if our universe was the beginning that came from the end of something else? What if there's more than one universe? Are we living in a multiverse? Is the world a disc on the back of 4 elephants carried by an enormous turtle? I honestly don't think we're ready for the answers yet. If religion can already cause war when we don't know what started the universe, imagine what would happen if we did.
Starting off this countdown, we have Cicada 3301. Now this is one of the most famous internet mysteries of all time. So it all started in 2012 when a mysterious organization, Cicada 3301, posted a weird message on 4chan. According to the message, there was a secret hidden within their posted image, and they were recruiting highly intelligent individuals to try and solve it. They said that solving this would lead them on the road to finding them, and that they looked forward to meeting those that solved it. Well, it turns out that by opening the image file in a text editing app, a string of characters would appear. When decoded, it led users to a website with even more weird messages. Some say that they solved the mystery. Others say that those who completed the puzzle are recruited for something and are never heard from again. What are they recruited for though? That's what I would like to know. In our 9th spot, we have Heaven's Gate. This was a creepy and popular American religious cult on the internet that believed in UFOs. In 1997, police found 39 members of the cult dead inside of a house. Apparently, the members took their lives in order to ascend and board an extraterrestrial spacecraft and go to another planet. They were all found wearing arm patches that read Heaven's Gate Away Team. To this day, the website is still up and running, and no one knows who's running it. Now in 2015, the administrators behind the website did do an email interview. In the interview, they called themselves Tela, which stands for the evolutionary level above humans. They claim that the dead members are actually alive and have transcended their human bodies, and that they will come back eventually. To this day, their identity still remains unknown. In our 8th spot, we have Chip-chan. This is one internet mystery that has always left me unsettled. Chip-chan is the name given to a Korean woman that was discovered in a 4chan webcam thread in 2008. It immediately caught the attention of a number of people because the footage revealed this woman sleeping in unusual positions for long periods of time at unusual times of day. In fact, at first, people thought that she was dead. She also sleeps in weird positions like on a chair or on the floor. After doing further investigation, users found that this woman believes that a mind control weapon was implanted into her ankle bone and under her left eyebrow. This chip is said to control her, and that's what's making her sleep all the time. She also claims that she is being held by a corrupt officer named P, and that she installed these webcams into her home so that she can see what happens to her when she's sleeping. This story is just so freaking creepy, and I don't think it's ever been solved. In our 7th spot today we have Kanye Quest. Yep, not Kanye West, Kanye Quest. Kanye Quest 3030 is an RPG game that was released in 2013. Now it seems just like a silly game. It centers around Kanye West, who on his way to take out trash travels through a wormhole and into the future. He then has to take down an evil dictator, and you got Tupac, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre in it, and you can have a rap battle with them. Now the game seems pretty harmless. That was until a player found out the game's dark secret. At one point in the game, you can interact with a displayed message. It seems like gibberish at first, until people realized it said, "Ascend and worship the based god." Further on in the game, you are asked to enter a prompt, and you can type anything you want. But if you type ascend, the whole game changes and you're put in this secret area. Eventually, players got to a screen that congratulated them on being an open-minded and curious thinker. They then instructed the player to not tell anyone about what they found. It then asks if you wish to participate. If you click yes, then they give you instructions on an exercise that you need to complete. Furthermore, players discovered a QR code that led to a now defunct website. In the end, it was discovered that the game has been tied to the religious cult of Ascensionism and to a mysterious company, Ascension Records. The true meaning of the secret of this game has remained unsolved to this day. Coming in at number 6, we have Jack Froese. Now there are a number of creepypastas out there about someone dying and then their loved ones receive phone calls or Facebook messages or texts from the dead person. Well, this actually happened in real life. Jack Froese was a 32-year-old man from Dunmore, Pennsylvania. In June of 2011, he died suddenly and unexpectedly from a heart arrhythmia. 5 months after Jack's death, his friend received an email from Jack's account with the subject line, "I'm watching." Soon his family started getting emails from Jack as well. Now of course they didn't believe it to be Jack for a second, but whoever it was, they knew intimate details regarding his friends and family, details only Jack would know. To this day, no one knows who sent these emails. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with GhostNet. This is the name given to a large-scale cyber spying operation uncovered in 2009. In fact, it has been described as one of the most extensive operations ever uncovered. Yet, no one knows who was behind this operation. So in 2009, it was found that an organization infiltrated over 1,000 computers across 103 countries. They did this by sending emails with attachments or links to individuals or organizations. By opening the file, the user would unknowingly download a virus onto their computer that allowed the hackers to gain complete control of their computers, so they could read and send data and even turn on someone's webcam and microphone. Like I said, no one knows who was behind this, but since the network originated in China, some believe that the Chinese government had something to do with this. Others believe that the CIA or the Russian government were behind this. In our 4th spot, we have the most mysterious song on the internet. This is the title given to a song with an unknown name, sung by an unknown artist with an unknown origin. It all started when a man named Darius came across an old cassette and liked a song on there and wanted to find the name of it. Him and his sister couldn't figure it out, so they turned to the internet for help. Soon, thousands of music enthusiasts came forward to try and figure out this song. To this day, no one has figured out who's behind this song, hence why it's given the name the most mysterious song on the internet. What's even weirder is when the song was shared online, a number of people recognized it. They said that they have heard it before, they just can't put their finger on it. In our 3rd spot, we have Markovian Parallax Denigrate. This mystery started back in the 90s and revolves around a number of weird and confusing posts that appeared to be complete gibberish. Back then, there was something called Usenet, which was like a forum. On August 5th of 1996, hundreds of weird messages started appearing on Usenet. No one knew what they meant, but people knew that they were related because each post had one thing in common. The subject line read Markovian Parallax Denigrate. Turns out that these are secret codes, but no one has been able to crack them yet. In our 2nd spot, we have Ted the Caver. Now some say this is merely just a creepypasta, whereas others believe it's a true story. I'll let you decide what you want to think. Back Back in February of 2000, a man known only by the name of Ted the Caver posted about exploring an unknown virgin cave passage in the US. According to Ted and his journal entries, when him and his friend entered the cave, they found a narrow passageway with a small hole. So they drilled the hole and decided to explore it further. But as they went to explore this cave, weird things began to happen. Him and his friend heard ghastly screaming, they found weird hieroglyphs on the cave walls, and apparently encountered evil spirits in the cave that followed them home. All of this was backed up with images of him and his friend exploring the cave. The last post was on May 19th, 2001, when Ted revisited the cave and said he would update everyone when he returned home. He never updated the post, making people believe that he never returned home. In fact, this mystery was so popular that a horror movie was made off of it. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Lake City Quiet Pills. Now, this is another very weird and wild one. So it starts with the death of a Reddit user, Religion of Peace. He was a moderator for the subreddit Jailbait, which is disturbing on its own. But he mainly posted about his military experience and guns, and would encourage posts to get people to upload pictures on his website, lakecityquietpills.com. But as many investigated his site, they realized that hidden inside the site's HTML code was a motto. It said, and I quote, "Dispensing Lake City quiet pills to lousy bastards in need of permanent rest since 1968. It continued on saying, "Shade is maintaining the calendar and access to the file dump. Angel has the job postings for EU and Asia. We aren't sending anyone to me. No one. Don't ask for listings." Then what followed were what appeared to be job listings. Here are some. Immediate need, 8 to 10 Chinese Korean, fluent, Korean dialect accent, details after contact. 12-week, half pay. And they went on to say that they needed Arabic French people. No papers, no problems. A lot of people then theorized that this site was used as a way to pass assassination jobs back and forth. As people dug further, they found a government-owned bullet factory in Missouri called Lake City Ammunition Plant. Meaning, the quiet pills that they're referring to are bullets. I mean, yeah, you get shot by one of those and you'll be quiet. So maybe this website was a front for some illegal activity.
The unsolved mystery of DB Cooper comes onto our list at number 10. This guy starts it off, well, was it even a guy? On November 24th of 1971, a Northwest Airlines flight was hijacked by a man who was concealing a bomb. He handed a list of demands to the flight attendant, who brought the list of the captain. DB Cooper wanted $200,000, which is equivalent to $1 million today, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the plane. Once the plane landed, an airline employee delivered a knapsack that was full of cash and a parachute. Cooper allowed all of the passengers and 2 flight attendants to leave the plane. 2 hours later, the plane took off, and when it landed in Reno, Cooper had mysteriously just disappeared. He vanished without a trace. No parachutes were ever found, and the ransom money was never used. This hijacking is the longest unsolved crime of its kind in FBI history. I'm pretty sure they're upset about this. They have no idea how to solve it, and it's been baffling investigators for decades. Even though this case was formally closed in 2016, which was actually quite recent, there are so many theories out there about the true identity of DB Cooper and what really happened to him. Let me know your theories about him in the comment section below. I mean, where do you guys think he went? The WOW signal brings us into number 9. The WOW signal was a strong radio signal that was received on August 15th in 1977 by Ohio State University Big Air Radio Telescope. It was coming from the direction of the Sagittarius constellation, and it seemed to be coming from an extraterrestrial source. The scientists who detect the signal put several circles on the printout and wrote "WOW" next to it. The signal lasted for 72 seconds, and it has never been detected ever since. Even though the WOW signal didn't have any information encoded on it, it actually remained one of the strongest candidates for an alien radio transmission that was ever detected. I just find this super interesting, and who knows, maybe we've received signals, lots of signals since then, but the government is actually hiding this information from us. And just like that, Bigfoot storms our list next up at number 8. Bigfoot is said to be an extremely tall, hairy, upright walking ape-like creature that lives in the wilderness and is known to leave a massive footprints. People have claimed that they've seen him lurking in the forests all across America, and because of this, his existence has sparked up a lot of debates and controversies. Some consider Bigfoot to be a combination of a hoax, maybe a folklore, while others believe that he could be the missing link between humans and our ancestors. Whatever the case may be, we have never captured Bigfoot, and it appears like he is very camera shy. So who knows, maybe Bigfoot really does exist and is extremely good at hiding. He's like the best at hide and go seek. Or there could be a lot of pranksters out there that are perpetuating this myth. The Black Dolly is now at number 7. On January 15th, 1947, Elizabeth Short was found brutally murdered in an empty lot in Los Angeles, California. Police did a thorough investigation and they searched everywhere for the killer, but he was never found. There are many theories about who murdered this young aspiring actress, but the mystery still remains unsolved. Her body was sliced in half and her face was cut so that it looked like she was giving us like a creepy smile. Things escalated from there when numerous people took credit for the crime, but none of them were actually charged with the murder. I mean, who does that? As more tragic details emerged from this case, she was given the nickname Black Dahlia. This has gone down in history as one of the oldest cold cases in LA, and it's also the city's most famous. Number 6, we have the Nixon tapes. After the Watergate scandal broke out, it changed America's politics forever. President Nixon eventually resigned on August 8th, 1974 because he reigned as President of the United States. Well, during that time it was full of corruption and illegal activity. Now to this day, a lot of people don't know about all the scandals that he was involved in. But one of the biggest mysteries about the presidency is the missing 18.5 minutes that were wiped out from Nixon's secret tapes. He bugged the Oval Office in order to make recordings of every conversation that took place in that room. But a large portion from one of the tapes is completely missing. So what information was destroyed and why was it destroyed? I'm so curious to know what was on those tapes, but I guess like everything on this list, we may never get an answer. Amelia Earhart flies into this list at number 5. We've talked about her a ton on this channel. The last time that Earhart was seen alive was during the summer of 1937. She was aboard her plane and attempted to fly around the world. The scary part about this story is that Amelia Earhart vanished, just vanished without a trace, but US authorities believe that she crashed somewhere in the Pacific. But that didn't stop a lot of people to make up, their own speculations, their own theories. According to a bunch of people, she probably survived the crash and is living somewhere else in the world. There have been pictures of her allegedly still alive, and this is years after she disappeared. But at the time, the search for her was the most extensive air and sea search in history, and unfortunately she was declared legally dead in 1939 despite never finding her body. Who really killed JFK? And this comes into number 4. The JFK assassination has always been associated with a ton of controversy. We all know that Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested and charged with the assassination of JFK, but did he act alone? Or was there another sniper involved? A lot of people are pointing their fingers at the CIA, the mafia, the Cuban president Fidel Castro, and even the Vice President Johnson. Did you guys know that only 20 to 30% of Americans believe that Oswald acted alone? So the identity of the second or even third killer remains as one of the biggest mysteries to this day. Escape from Alcatraz brings us to number 3. Alcatraz prison is located on a small island in San Francisco Bay. Between 1934 and 1963, it was used as a federal prison and it housed some of America's most dangerous and infamous criminals. But apart from that, Alcatraz had a reputation of being the most inescapable prison in the US because everyone who tried to escape, well, they were either caught or they died trying, well, except for 3 convicted bank robbers. These 3 men managed to escape from Alcatraz in 1962. They dug their way to freedom with spoons and they sailed away in a raft that was made entirely out of raincoats. The whole escape was masterfully planned, but no one knows what happened to these men. Did they actually manage to escape? Did they drown in the cold waters, or were they swept away at sea? Well, it's really anyone's guess because their bodies were never found. But apparently a letter was sent to the San Francisco Police Department in 2013 that forced them to reopen the case. Was it a letter from one of them? The letter says, "My name is John Eglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I'm 83 years old and in bad shape. I have cancer. Yes, we made it that night, but barely. What do you guys think? Is this real? real? Could this be a hoax? I'm really hoping that it is real, because why not? I mean, what a story. And we might actually get an ending to the storybook. Area 51 jumps into our list on number 2. Area 51 is definitely a hot topic right now. I mean, this place is covered with secrecy, mystery, and of course extraterrestrial conspiracy theories. Apparently Area 51 is just a military base located in Nevada, but there's little information that is actually known about what goes on inside. Most people think that Area 51 is an extraterrestrial technology research site because people have claimed to have seen UFOs around the property, and past employees have actually testified that alien autopsies were performed there. Even though Area 51 is on the map, it is a highly restricted area with armed guards patrolling the fences, so maybe we will never know the truth about Area 51, and honestly, I'm not sure if I really want to. Number 1, we're talking about, well, the biggest mystery of all, the Zodiac Killer. This is an unidentified American serial killer who is believed to have murdered 6 people in Northern California, and this took place between 1966 and 1969. The San Francisco police have investigated over 2,500 suspects. I mean, that is a lot of people to question since the 1960s, but they haven't been able to find the killer. Or maybe they have, maybe they actually interviewed him, but he got away with it. The Zodiac Killer sent taunting letters to the police and the media with encrypted messages and ciphers that promised to give them clues about his identity, but no one was able to solve them. Those chilling messages also had horrific information about his victims. There are theories that the Zodiac Killer remained active through the 80s as well, and he murdered many other people. But sadly, this case remains cold, and it is one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in the entire world.
Coming in at number 10 is the lost colony of Roanoke. You want to talk about ghosting? It's one thing to have someone you've been seeing to stop messaging you back for whatever reason, but imagine your whole town just disappearing. I mean, that would give you some major abandonment issues. The year was 1585, and Governor John White was going to travel from what would now be North Carolina to England so he could get some more supplies for his people. A very noble journey, but you gotta leave everyone behind, such is the life of a sailor. Well, Mr. White made the trip, and when he got back, everything was gone. Like, the settlement was still there, but the people had all vanished. The strange thing was that there was no sign of invasion or mass murder. It was like the whole colony just got up and left. The only thing left behind was a piece of paper with the word Croton written on it. This leaves a lot to be discovered. Coming in at number 9, we have Brandon Swanson. Back in 2008, the story of a missing man was about to shake a community to its core. It was in Minnesota, and Brandon was driving home from a party. It was thought that he may have been drinking, but whether or not he was actually under the influence is still unknown. He lost control of his car on his way home and crashed into a ditch. Now, he didn't have a lot of options, so he called his parents. He told them where he was, and they went out to go pick him up. They got to the spot where he claimed that he had crashed his car, but Brandon and the car were nowhere to be found. This was all happening while they were on the phone with him, and then out of nowhere, the call cut out, and that was it. A search team was sent out that eventually found the car that was over 20 miles away from the location where he said he had crashed, but even though they found the car, Brandon was never found. Coming in at number 8, we have Where is Jimmy Hoffa? Jimmy Hoffa was a force back in the late 1950s and early 1960s. He made a major push for union workers' rights. He was fighting against massive companies to ensure people in the workforce had better protected wages, work schedules, and benefits. But even though this guy sounds like he was one of the nicest dudes in town, he didn't do all of this squeaky clean. There was a ton of suspicion that Hoffa was deeply involved in organized crime and racking up massive amounts of illegal money. Eventually, the feds came snooping around, and Hoffa was picked up for jury tampering, bribery, and mail fraud. He was sent to prison in 1967 and was supposed to serve 13 years, but he cut a deal, stepped down as president of the union, and was a free man in 1971. Obviously, when you're involved in organized crime and then you cut a deal with the cops, you can agitate some people. And in 1975, Hoffa went missing. It's thought that the mob may have had something to do with his disappearance, but to this day, it's still unknown if he's dead, and if he was killed, where his body is. There was a rumor floating around that it's underneath Giant Stadium. Coming in at number 7, we have Oak Island. There has been a long-standing mystery about Oak Island. Apparently, there's a massive money pit somewhere on the island. There's even an entire show on the Discovery Channel that has been dedicated to finding this treasure, a show that has been running for 7 seasons. I mean, come on, how long does it take you to find a treasure on a little island? They are really milking that one, if you ask me. Now, some people say that the whole thing is just a hoax, just a tale made up by 2 kids who went to the island and wanted to tell something to the town, townies so they could get them all worked up. But other people swear that this treasure is real, and they dedicate huge chunks of their lives to finding it. Coming at number 6, we have There's Something Wrong with the Water. Back in 2013, a very disturbing discovery was made at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. People at the hotel were complaining that the water had a moldy taste and was coming out a funny color. Someone went up to inspect the water tank, and they found something that probably had a horde of people asking for their money back. There was a body floating around in the tanker. It was later unveiled that it was the body of Elisa Lam. Now this is where the mystery starts. There was footage of Elisa acting very strange in the hotel, like someone was following her. However, she had a history of bipolar disorder, so this might explain her strange behavior. But no one has been able to find out how she got to the roof of the hotel, got into the tank, and then closed the lid. Coming in at number 5, we have dead black birds. Nothing like 5,000 dead black birds to have everyone feel like the end of the world is right around the corner. I mean, I get why people were spooked by this. Just listen to this story. This is back in 2010. It was New Year's Eve in the town of Beebe, Arkansas. And out of nowhere, 5,000 birds flew into the side of a building, killing themselves. Now people started to freak out, but the most logical reasoning was that this ominous bird suicide was caused by fireworks. But the next year, the same thing happened, even though fireworks were outlawed in the town. If it makes you feel any better, it was only 200 birds this time. The reasoning for this has never been discovered, which has led people to think that this is a sign of dark times. Coming in at number 4, we have Amelia Earhart. I mean, everyone knows about this mystery, but if for whatever reason you have never heard about this tale, let me fill you in. Amelia Earhart was one of the greatest pilots of her time. She was setting world records in aviation, and she was easily one of the most famous people in America. Flight was something new, and the people who could master it were seen as incredible. She shocked the world as she became the first woman to do a solo trip across the Atlantic Ocean. She wanted to shock the world once again by flying around the world, and this was in 1937. This was more than a test of skill, this was a test of endurance. Well, something went terribly wrong somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, and her signal was lost. Since then, no one has been able to get to the bottom of what happened to her. There's a chance that she flew into some storm clouds, and her plane was badly damaged and she crashed. But this may be something we never get to the bottom of. Coming in at number 3, we have the Isabella Gardner Museum heist. Now, it's never okay to steal, but you got to admit, this next story is super cool. Back in the 1990s, 2 men pulled off the biggest art heist in history. They went to the Isabella Gardner Museum in Boston, which houses some of the rarest, most expensive art of all time. So you probably think these guys came in like Mission Impossible, came down from the ceiling, used lasers to cut through glass. No, that's not what happened at all. They dressed up as cops. They walked into the museum at night, told the security that they were real cops. The security believed them. They then gathered all the security into one area, pulled guns on them, handcuffed and gagged them, and then the 2 cops went around cutting out paintings and took off with $500 million worth of art. Are you serious? This is absolutely insane. And to this day, no one knows who did it. There are some suspicions that some famous mobsters or Hollywood bigwigs could have something to do with it, but no one can say for sure. In fact, the museum still has a $10 million award out for the return of any of these paintings. Coming in at number 2, we have Area 51. This place was the biggest thing in the news this time last year. Remember before the coronavirus, when it was totally okay to make an event that was supposed to have a grouping of millions of people? Those were simpler times. But the reason that this supposed raid on Area 51 was supposed to happen is because we all have no idea what the hell is going on in there. Everyone suspects that there has to be something in there to do with aliens. There was a whole documentary with Bob Lazar who claims that he used to work at Area 51 and that they are working on tech that can manipulate gravity. This gravity reactor, as Bob calls it, can be a propulsion system for ships that allows them to move faster than science supposedly allows. All of this is insane, but we have no idea if any of these tales are real because they won't let us go in there and snoop around. Just let us have a peek, man. I want to see some aliens. And coming in at number 1, we have Who Shot JFK? I know what the history books have to say, but a lot of people will not accept that Lee Harvey Oswald was the only shooter on that day, or that he was just some deranged man who wanted to kill the president for some unknown reason. A lot of people think there was a second shooter on that day. There's even footage that shows Kennedy getting hit from 2 different angles. How could that happen if there was only one person shooting at him? Some people think that the mob was involved because JFK was cracking down on organized crime. Other people say that it was all the CIA. And to only throw fuel on the fire, Oswald was shot and killed before he could stand trial. It was Jack Rudy who killed him, and he said it was all his idea to assassinate assassinate the assassin. But there's so much murky mystery around this, and it is the president getting assassinated, so of course it's going to bring up a lot of questions.
Starting us off with number 10 is Gayle Raubel. I feel like this story was really lost in time and deserves a lot more attention than it got. Now, Gayle was Hitler's half-niece and became his housekeeper in 1925. But their relationship was super weird. Despite being related and being 19 years younger than Hitler, they had a weird, possessive, sexual relationship. They spent the next 6 years in this weird relationship, and it was clear he had a lot of control over her actions. When he found out she was having an affair with his chauffeur, he forced her to end it and then had her chaperoned at all times. By 1930, she wanted to go to Vienna to continue her singing lessons and marry someone from Linz, but Hitler forbade it. The two had a heated argument in September of 1931, and then he departed for a meeting in Nuremberg. That night, Gayle killed herself with Hitler's pistol, and he was recalled back to Munich. But it's unclear whether the death was a suicide or a murder, because when her body was found, she had a fractured nose and numerous other injuries other than the gunshot. And I mean, if she just shot herself, why would she have all these other injuries? Doesn't really make sense. Police ruled out foul play because, let's face it, Hitler controlled them, but controversy erupted ASAP Rocky about Hitler having murdered her, which is fair enough. But that was also quickly silenced because of the Nazis' political influence and the fact they'll probably kill you if you talk A journalist investigating her death was arrested before publishing his findings and then executed. Ironically, Hitler actually said she was the only woman he had ever loved. A Vanity Fair article published in 1992 speculated that maybe he accidentally shot her or she was killed on his orders, since apparently she was pregnant with his child and he was not happy about it. So there's definitely motive. Also, can we just, how ridiculous is that? How do you accidentally shoot someone? Okay. Coming in at number 9 is the Gregory affair, and this family affair has a lot of twists and turns, so I mean, pay attention, people. Back in October of 1984, 4-year-old Gregory Villeman was playing in the front yard of his house in France while his mum did some laundry. 15 minutes pass and the boy is now nowhere to be found, and his uncle receives an anonymous call saying the boy was thrown into the Voynich River. His body was later found in the river with a hat pulled over his face and his hands and feet bound with rope. Now, let's just quickly hit you with some backstory. During the years before the murder, the Villeman family had been receiving many anonymous calls and letters from a male who wanted revenge against Gregory's dad, Jean-Marie. After his murder, the family got a letter saying, "I have taken vengeance." Now here's where it gets messy. Jean-Marie's cousin Bernard was implicated for the murder based on handwriting experts and was taken into custody. He denied any involvement, but Jean-Marie promised in front of a bunch of press that he would kill Bernard. When he was released, Jean-Marie shot him as he was leaving for work and then was sent to jail for murder. Didn't really think that one through, did you? While that was going on, Gregory's mom was then identified as the one writing all the letters, and then she was charged with a murder and then cleared of the charges 7 years later. This is like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but it's like the Villemans. The case stayed cold till 2000 when DNA testing reopened it and implicated 3 more family members: the great aunt and uncle and another aunt. So at this point, half the family has been implicated in the murder with no conclusion, and no one knows who killed the boys still. Keeping Up with the Villemans. I would watch that. At number 8 we have the Jameson family. Now this family of 3 suspiciously disappeared on the 8th of October in 2009, but the whole thing was just majorly sus. The family's pickup truck was found a few days into them being missing and it was abandoned. Their malnourished dog was found inside along with their IDs, their phones, their wallets, and $32,000 in cash. But apparently that was all good because the family was known to carry huge amounts of cash with them, which again, I don't know why anyone didn't question that. That is weird. Many theories came out about the case that perhaps the family had faked their own deaths and were now in the witness protection program. This came up because the father, Bobby, was in a lawsuit against his dad, Bob, because he'd apparently threatened Bobby and hit him with a car. Others say the family was involved in drug dealing because of all the cash that they always had, and that perhaps they were drug addicts that had just lost the plot. On the other hand, the couple had visited their pastor on multiple occasions, telling him they had seen spirits and apparitions inside their home, so maybe they were possessed. possessed? I don't know. Others even think it was a group suicide, like there's just a lot going on and I don't know who to believe. The remains were found 4 years later and were correctly identified as the 3 family members. Still no idea what the hell happened though. Filling our number 7 slot is the ghost blimp. Now back in the summer of 1942, the locals of San Francisco saw something bizarre in the sky. They witnessed a sagging broken blimp falling to earth. On its way down, it stopped on a rooftop and then took down a bunch of power lines and damaged the nearby area quite a bit. After watching it fall for what seemed like ages, when it finally landed, locals ran to help the crew inside, only to find out that no one was manning the blimp. Everything inside looked normal-ish. The engine had been smashed on impact, the propellers were bent, and gas was leaking into the street, but the lifeboats and parachutes hadn't been used, so where the hell was the crew? The blimp had left the naval station that morning with Lieutenant Ernest Cody and Ensign Charles Adams on board, yet the duo were never seen again. The Navy were adamant the men wouldn't leave the blimp voluntarily, so they theorized that perhaps the gondola door malfunctioned and one of them fell out and the other tried to steer the ship down to the water to save him and then fell out as well. Seems like a very unlikely story, but sure, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Not. Now at number 6 is Walter Collins. Now back in the late 1920s, Christina Ida Collins made headlines after her 9-year-old son Walter went missing. He went to the cinema one day and never came home, and his disappearance was huge in LA. Hundreds and hundreds of leads came in that the police followed up, but to no avail until 5 months later when they found a boy in Illinois claiming to be Walter. Christine was shown a bunch of photos and letters from Walter before bringing him home, but upon his arrival in LA, Christine claimed that the boy wasn't her son. And you are not the mother, and he is not your son. The officer told her to take him home and see and try him out, but she came back 3 weeks later saying it wasn't her son and she had dental records to back up her claim. The police thought she was just trying to embarrass them and accused her of being a bad mother, so much so that they got her committed to a psych ward for being difficult or an inconvenience. After screwing her the hell over, the officer in charge interviewed Walter, who admitted he was actually 12-year-old Arthur Hutchins Jr., a runaway boy. He was hoping posing as Walter would allow him to go to LA to meet his favorite actor. That's just not really how it works, Arthur. Christine was released 10 days after his confessions, and Gordon Stewart Northcutt, the man guilty for the Wineville chicken coop murders, was suspected as Walter's murderer. And that was because Gordon's mum said she helped her son kill Walter, but he was never brought to trial for Walter's murder, and Christine still believed he was alive somewhere and looked for him till the day she died. Till this day, we don't know whether Gordon killed him, whether he got abducted by somebody else, whether he just ran away, we just don't know. And also, drinking game, how many times did I say Walter in that bloody paragraph? Walter, 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 like shut up, Eamon. Coming in at number 5 is Jodine Serin. Now Jodine was a 39-year-old woman that had been diagnosed with schizophrenia along with multiple other mental disabilities. She was still a very high-functioning individual and she lived alone in an apartment in Carlsbad. Her parents went to check up on her on Valentine's Day back in 2007, and they walked in on what they thought was a funnily awkward scene. They caught Jodine in bed having sex with who they assumed was a boyfriend. I don't know, maybe you just want to sleep around, maybe it's not a boyfriend. We don't shame Jodine. Either way, the parents told them to get dressed, assuming an embarrassed couple would soon come out of the room, but they were quite wrong. After waiting quite a while, they checked in on them again and realized the man had escaped without being detected and that Jodine had been strangled to death. She had been beaten and had been dead for at least a day or more before they actually found her. Forensic evidence a decade later confirmed the man in the room that day was not her killer. Autopsy results pointed to blunt force trauma to the head as the cause of death. The case stayed cold for a very long time, but in 2018, David Mabrito was identified through DNA and genetic ancestry as being a possible suspect for her murder. But he committed suicide in 2011, so I guess we'll just never know. At number 4 is the Phantom Barber. Now let me set the scene. Location, Pascagoula, Mississippi. Time, summer of 1942. A contained fear took over the locals of the small coastal town as someone broke into people's homes at night by slitting their window screens. He would go into women's bedrooms and cut off locks of their hair, but that's it. He wouldn't kill them, no one would get hurt, but quite a few women reported the incident. The first 2 incidents were innocent, but the third got violent. The Phantom Barber attacked a sleeping couple by assaulting them with a crowbar, breaking the woman's teeth and knocking the husband completely out. Both survived but could not for the life of them identify the assailant. In the fourth incident, he seemed to have chloroformed his victim and taken her hair, but again, that's it. Retired chemist William Dolan was charged with the attacks when a bundle of hair was found behind his residence. A few years later, he was released after passing a lie detector test, so no one quite knows who this person was. Some still believe it was William behind the incident, some people think it's someone else completely, whereas others just have no clue whatsoever. Which camp do you fall under? Let me know. Filling our number 3 slot is Lars Mittink. Now this one really got me because I simply just don't understand what happened here. So back in July of 2014, Lars went to Golden Sands in Bulgaria with a bunch of friends. Party it up, dude, yeah. And basically a bunch of young people go there for a good time. It's like going to Mallorca or Ibiza. Either way, a few days into the trip, Lars got into a fight with 4 random guys over football because God forbid anyone disrespect a guy's football team. He ended up coming out of the situation with a ruptured eardrum, and doctors told him he wasn't fit to fly home with his friends. Despite his friends offering to stay with him, Lars insisted he'd be fine alone and they left on their way. He checked into a cheap hotel in Bulgaria, but the day after his friends left, he started acting very weird. He was erratic, he was paranoid, and he texted his mum saying he felt unsafe to cancel his credit card and that he was hiding from 4 men that were apparently following him. And I hope to God it wasn't the same 4 men from the fight before, because I mean, insulting Bayern Munich, it's not that deep, it's really not. Either way, the CCTV footage captured Lars' last moments where he was seen inside Varna airport with his bags. A while later, he can be seen running straight out of the airport without his bags, and then outside the airport he runs to a fence, climbs it, runs into the woods, and has literally never been seen since. Where are you at? No. Now at number 2 are the Devil's Footprints. Now back in February of 1855 in Dover, England, residents of a town woke up to find hoof-like footprints around their homes. The prints were 4 inches long and 3 inches wide and covered 40 to 100 miles of track, which is quite substantial. But the weird thing about it was that the marks were in a single file line, and no 4-legged animal could have produced prints like that. So locals truly believe the devil had come to Dover, because that's clearly the first thing you should think of. The prints just went straight over obstacles like rivers and houses and haystacks, and were even on top of people's houses on their roofs. Some people literally had these prints walking straight up to their front door, and back in the day, all hell freaking broke loose and people were hoping to God it wasn't Satan. They were pointing to hopping mice, or a kangaroo, or badgers, or an experimental balloon. Kangaroos in Dover, England, really. Basically, they were clutching at straws, and no one's figured out what the hell happened since then, so we're just gonna keep it at that. It was a kangaroo, or an experimental balloon. Alright. And I thought I talked a lot of shit. And finally, at number 1 are the lead-masked men. Back in August of 1966, 2 corpses were found on Vintum Hill in Rio de Janeiro. The bodies were wearing suits, waterproof coats, and had lead masks over their eyes. Now with their bodies, authorities found towels, water bottles, and a notebook with the instructions 1630 be at agreed place, 1830 swallow capsules, after effect protect metals, wait for mask signal. The men were identified as Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana. The families told authorities they said they were going out to get work supplies, but instead boarded a bus and headed towards Niterói. The 2 stopped at a bar in town where the waitress claimed Miguel seemed especially nervous and was constantly checking his watch. Now no one knows what was in those capsules that both men swallowed, and the toxicology report was inconclusive. The lead masks also made no sense. Like, if they were protecting the men from radiation, fine, but what radiation? Bish aware. 50 years later, we still don't know what the hell that was, and I guess we never will. That's why it's number 1 on this list. Starting us off at number 10 is the Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. On March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777 aircraft with 227 passengers and 12 crew members aboard it vanished into thin air. The flight, which was headed to Beijing and departed from Kuala Lumpur International, was going smoothly until the plane crossed into Vietnamese airspace. Although the captain checked in with air traffic control in Kuala Lumpur, he failed to communicate with Ho Chi Minh City air traffic control, so what the hell happened down there. Coincidentally, at the same time, the plane tracker also stopped working, so there was no way of knowing where it was. Of course, the military still had a radar which could track it and saw the flight go off course and head southwest, with many believing it went that way for at least 5 hours. To this day, only pieces of the plane have been found, and there are tons of theories as to what happened, from an international attack to the captain taking his own life along with all the passengers. We may never know what happened to that flight, and it's absolutely heartbreaking for the victims' families and incredibly scary. Coming in at number 9 is Ben McDaniel. McDaniel was a scuba diver, and on August 18th, 2010, he went for his last possible dive. Ben went to Vortex Spring in Florida and tried to access a part of the underwater cave that was only for intermediate divers. Although Ben didn't really have any qualifications, the Vortex Spring employees still let him go through, fearing he would try to sneak in anyway, get caught in the gate, and then drown. That was the last time anyone saw Ben McDaniel alive. Over a dozen cave divers would search every inch of the cave, and it was determined someone Ben's size couldn't get stuck too deep in the cave. An above ground search which ran over the course of 36 days didn't turn up anything either. To this day, no one knows what happened to Ben, although some think he may have started a new life, while others think the exact opposite. At number 8, we have Patrick Warren and David Spencer. On Boxing Day 1996, these two best friends told their parents they were going to visit one of Patrick's brothers. 11-year-old Patrick left his house riding his brand new bike, while 13-year-old David was on foot. The next day, one of Patrick's other brothers, Derek Warren, went looking for the boys when he found out they never arrived at their destination. Now, at first, police thought the boys had run away, then Patrick's bike was found behind a gas station. It took them weeks to realize it was actually Patrick's, and this led to an investigation which got very little media attention, but included the boys' faces being plastered on many milk cartons. Professor David Wilson, a criminologist, believes the case was mishandled to begin with because of the boys' families' working class backgrounds. The class wars, they just never end, do they? Although a suspect was named, there was never enough conclusive evidence to believe he was actually guilty. A police chief with the homicide unit went on record saying she believes the boys are dead but will not stop investigating until they have the answers they're looking for. Filling our number 7 slot is Ray Gricker. Ray worked as a district attorney in Center County, Pennsylvania, and on the 15th of April 2005, he randomly just vanished. Ray was skipping work as he usually did on Fridays. However, when Gricker didn't come home, his girlfriend reported him missing, and the cops found his car parked not far from a bridge. Ray was never seen again, but a fisherman found Ray's laptop months after his disappearance. Oddly, the hard drive had been removed, but was also eventually found on shore. Although it was too damaged to extract any information, investigators found searches on Ray's home computer that read how to wreck a hard drive and water damage to a notebook computer. Here's where things get even more interesting though. Some believe Gricker was murdered because he was part of an investigation involving Jerry Sanfusky, yet Gricker had declined to press charges back in 1998. Gricker retired in 2005, and something out of fear, he may have been set up to keep the truth from coming out. Ultimately, Sandusky wouldn't be able to stop the truth from coming out regardless if he was part of Gricker's disappearance or not. The truth always comes out, baby. Now at number 6 is Amelia Earhart. On July 2nd, 1937, Earhart disappeared while flying over the Pacific Ocean. We should all know the story by now, I don't need to tell it to you guys. There are countless theories regarding what really happened, from her simply crashing to being captured as a war criminal and so on. As of now, there isn't enough evidence to allow us to fully understand what truly happened. Remains have been found over the years, both of what's believed to be Earhart as well as the remains of her plane, but there is no way to be at 100% certain. By 1939, Earhart was declared legally dead, although there was no reason to assume so. Some think it was to allow her husband to remarry, others think it was in hopes it would give people the closure they needed. Either way, till this day, no one knows what really happened to the incredibly brave Amelia Earhart. Coming in at number 5 is Lauren Spira. In the early hours of June 3rd, 2011, a 20-year-old student at Indiana University, Lauren Spira, would go missing. And it's very weird how little information there is on this disappearance. Lauren was with her friend Corey Rossman leaving a bar around 2:30 a.m. and they were both pretty intoxicated. The two of them went to Lauren's place, then Corey's place, where he would fall asleep. Lauren would then try making her way home, but ended up at Corey's neighbor's place and would leave there around 4:30 a.m., which was the last time anyone saw her. Coincidentally, when Lauren's boyfriend Jesse Wolf tried to get in touch with her, he found out she had left her phone at the bar. After the 2015 murder of a 22-year-old just miles miles away from Lauren's campus, police thought they may finally have a suspect. After investigation, there was no connection between the two cases, and to this day, no one knows what happened to Lauren. At number 4 is Brian Schaefer. On March 31st, 2006, Brian Schaefer would meet up with his friend William Clint Florence at a bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Very ugly name. The two would go bar hopping all night until returning to the Ugly Tuna just before 2 in the morning. Security footage shows Schaefer going into the bar but never leaving. Although the boys went out on a Friday night, Schaefer wasn't reported missing until Monday when he didn't show up for his flight to Miami, where he was supposed to spend spring break with his girlfriend. The Ohio State medical student was grieving the loss of his mother, and those around him say he took it incredibly hard, leading them to believe Schaefer may have taken his own life. Others think he may have been a victim of foul play, and interestingly enough, his friend who he was with, William, refused to take a lie detector test. But that doesn't account for the security cameras not seeing him, or someone carrying his body and leaving. That's the scariest part. Where did he literally go? Filling at number 3 slot is Jimmy Hoffa. You may recognize the name because the Netflix movie The Irishman was all about him. Spoiler alert, he is missing. The mobster who is most notably known for leading the Teamsters Union and gaining clemency from President Richard Nixon went missing in 1975, and till this day has the FBI completely stumped. After being released from prison early in 1971, Hoffa would spend the next 4 years under the watchful eye of the FBI. Then he would enter a Michigan restaurant, presumably to meet with other mob bosses, and disappear never to be seen again. Some believe he was taken out, while others simply don't even know where to begin. Hoffa was declared legally dead in 1982, although his body was never recovered, and as recently as 2013, the FBI was still digging up a field near Detroit looking for evidence. They didn't find any. Now at number 2 is Boris Weisfehler. In 1984, the 43-year-old man took a trip to Chile, where authorities concluded he drowned while trying to cross a river on a hike. The only evidence that Weisfehler was ever by a river was the fact his backpack was found near one. 16 years after his disappearance, US documents became declassified, and it turns out a witness allegedly saw Weisfehler being interrogated before being shot point blank. This led to a new investigation, and in 2012, a total of 8 men, including police and military officers, were charged with Weisfehler's disappearance and kidnapping. 4 years later, the case was closed and the men were all freed. Weisfehler's body still hasn't been found, and his family is still looking for answers regarding his disappearance. And finally, at number 1 are the Beaumont siblings. In 1966, 9-year-old Jane, 7-year-old Anna, and 4-year-old Grant would oddly disappear from Glenelg Beach in Australia. Their parents let them go to the beach quite often, as long as they came home by their curfew. When the children left that day at 10 AM and didn't return for their 2 PM curfew, the Beaumonts got worried. By 7:30 that night, their mother called the police, and witnesses at the beach said they saw the kids with a tall blonde guy with a very thin face. A local vendor also told authorities the kids bought a meat pie, which was strange because the kids had never purchased one before and their parents hadn't sent them out with any money. This led to even more unanswered questions. Where did they get the money for the meat pie? Why did they even buy a meat pie? And most importantly, where did the children go? There's still $1 million reward regarding their disappearance. Some think the man abducted them, while others fear they were washed out to sea, or Grant got pulled out and assistants attempted to save him and failed. Honestly, when I first read this story, it really gave me a series of unfortunate events vibes, like 3 children, Beaumont, Baudelaire, thin blonde man, Count Olaf. Are we seeing the parallels? Because I certainly am making them.
Starting off this countdown, we have the stolen work. This mystery revolves around Ernest Hemingway, the well-known American journalist. In 1992, Hemingway's wife Hadley was living in Paris while he was traveling Europe as a reporter. While he was in Switzerland, he wrote to his wife and asked her to join him in Geneva. He also told her to bring with her some of his unpublished manuscripts. So, Hadley packed 4 years' worth of Hemingway's work into a suitcase. Most of the work were originals, not copies. She then boarded the train in Paris and put the suitcase in the luggage compartment. She left for a couple of seconds to get some water, and when she returned, the suitcase was gone along with all his valuable work. Even after getting help searching the train, they were never able to find the suitcase, his work, or the person behind this crime. Moving on to number 9, we have the Marseille Bar Massacre. On October 3rd, 1978, at around 8:10 p.m., 3 armed shooters entered the bar du Téléphone in Marseille and killed 10 people. All of the victims were shot in the head. Police believe that the attack was a result of gang rivalry. Now, what's frustrating is that during the investigation, no fingerprints were taken and the crime scene was not properly preserved. They also just let reporters go into the crime scene, which messed up all the evidence. No forensic evidence was discovered except for a couple of casings. The case is still unsolved, and no one has been convicted of this massacre. Coming in at number 8, we have the UFO. This is a bizarre case of 5 people who all claim to have seen a UFO in Hérouville, France. On the morning of January 10th, 1998, 3 friends were headed out to a hunting party. Their 4th friend was following them in their own vehicle. That's when all 4 of them saw a giant disc levitating in the sky that was emitting bright lights. Now, this article was in French, so I did my best to translate it, so if I got any details wrong, I apologize. But apparently, they passed out, and when they regained consciousness, they were at the hunting parking lot where they were planning to meet in the first place. There, they found their other friend waiting for them, who also claims to have witnessed this disc in the sky. In fact, one of the witnesses even suffered from burns to their eyes from staring at the disc's bright lights. It said that 5 witnesses to the same event is extremely rare. To this day, we don't know what truly happened or what it is that these men saw. In our 7th spot, we have the Annecy shootings. The Annecy shootings, also referred to as the French Alps shootings, occurred on September 5th, 2012, near the southern end of Lake Annecy. 3 members of a vacationing family from England, along with a passing cyclist, were shot and killed while touring the area. Now, there has been much debate about this case. Police are still trying to figure out if it was just a random killing or if for some reason the family or cyclist was targeted. Now, someone did point out that one of the victims was a skilled aerospace engineer. The other victim, the cyclist, worked for a French nuclear company. What is the probability that 2 highly skilled engineers were in the same place at the same time? Seems like they may have been targeted for their work. Another theory is that it wasn't a professional killing, but more like someone who just killed for the thrill of it. Either way, the shooter has never been caught. In our 6th spot, we have the Burl Triangle. Turns out that France has its very own Bermuda Triangle. The Burl Triangle is a snowy highland area where several unexplained aircraft crashes have occurred. Apparently, more than 60 people have died in unexplainable plane crashes in this area. But that's not all. It's thought that UFOs might be responsible for these crashes. In November of 1943, a Halifax plane crashed in this area. Only 1 person survived. Now, this survivor claims that before the crash, they saw the plane surrounded by, I quote, a multitude of small, multicolored lights. Then in 1963, another plane crash occurred. While this plane went down, witnesses claimed to have seen small pink spheres surrounding the plane. And in 1971, another aircraft went down, killing all 17 of its passengers. However, an extra corpse had been found and never identified. To this day, we don't know what causes these crashes, if UFOs are really responsible for it, and who is the extra body that was found at the scene of the crash. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the skull collection. In 2013, a French diver looking for sea urchins stumbled upon a pile of human bones near a seabed in the French Riviera. The remains are an incomplete set, but there are said to be bones from at least 4 different individuals. One of the more mysterious things is a skull with the words, "Death to Pet" written on it in permanent marker. Police don't know what to make of this. It's thought that the bones have been in the water for at least a decade. Out of the bones, 1 is found to have belonged to 17-year-old Stefan Hurston, who disappeared in 1994. The other parts found were a femur from a male, a humerus from a male and female, a skull, and a part of a jaw. But what's weird is that since the writing was on the skull itself, that means the killer would have had to wait until the body fully decomposed to write this message. We don't know who committed these crimes, where the rest of the body parts are, or who the bones belong to. In our 4th spot, we have Jonathan Coulomb. On April 7th, 2004, 10-year-old Jonathan Coulomb was abducted in the middle of the night while at a camp in western France. 6 weeks later, his body was found. He was found at the bottom of a pond, naked, tied up, and weighed down by cinder blocks. An autopsy revealed that Jonathan was suffocated to death, and then his body was discarded of in the pond. This case remained cold for several years. Now, in April of 2000, a German serial killer did come forward saying he was responsible for killing Jonathan, but police are still investigating these claims. We don't know if this is true, so for now, the case remains unsolved. Moving on to number 3, we have Letitia Thoreau. On the evening of May 16, 1937, 29-year-old Letitia Tarot entered a metro station and boarded the first-class car. She was headed towards central Paris. All the other cars were full, but it was said that the first-class car was empty. The train departed at 6:26 p.m. and 45 seconds later it arrived to the next stop. That was when Letitia was found murdered. She had a 9-inch dagger in her neck. Yet no one exited the train and no one was in the car with her. And they acted fast. So the mystery remains. Who killed her? Well, after investigations, police discovered that she actually lived a double life. She was apparently working as a spy for the Parisian detective agency. Her job was to infiltrate La Cajole, a French far-right terrorist group. So theory goes that her cover was blown and was murdered by a member of this group. But we still don't truly know. There has never been any arrest for her murder, and French police files on this case are sealed until 2038. In our second spot, we have the dancing plague. Now, I am truly baffled by this case. In 1518, the citizens of France were plagued by a weird illness. Basically, it caused them to dance uncontrollably and unwillingly for days. This lasted for 2 months until it just randomly stopped. It all started in July of 1518 when a woman named Miss Trophia started to begin dancing. She was unable to stop and kept dancing until she passed out. When she woke up, she continued to dance for days. Then suddenly, this happened to 30 more people. Eventually, around 400 people were a victim of this weird dancing plague. In fact, it killed a couple people per day and injured hundreds. Now, there are a couple theories as to what happened. The first theory is that they were possessed by a demon. The second was that their blood was overheating. And the third, probably the most likely, is that they ate bread made from rye flour that was contaminated with ergot. Ergot is known to cause people to convulse. However, these are only theories. This mysterious case has never been solved. But seriously, doesn't it sound like that creepy pasta called the Song and Dance Man? It does. And in our number one spot, we have Little Gregory. This case remains France's best known unsolved murder case. On October 16th, 1984, 4-year-old Gregory Villman was beside his house playing on a mound of sand. When his mother came out to get him, he was gone. Shortly after, his uncle received an anonymous phone call telling him that Gregory was kidnapped and dumped in the Voynich River. It was true. Gregory was found tied up and drowned in this river. After Gregory's death, his parents received anonymous phone calls and hate mail from someone calling themselves Le Corbeau, or the Crow. They threatened getting revenge against the family, especially Gregory's father. Whoever this caller was, they knew private details about the family. To this day, the killer has never been found.
Starting us off at number 10 is the Battery Man. Slavisa Pajkic, aka Biba Struja, aka Electric Biba, is a man who since the age of 17 has apparently had electricity coursing through his body at all times. He can literally fry a hot dog with his bare hands. He claims he's an insulator, accumulator, conductor, and heater all in one. Using 2 metal pins, he can even make a light bulb light up, even though if any normal person touched 220 volts, they would die. Not him though, it's not even a thing for him. Just makes it look so easy. He even makes an electric circuit with him and a bunch of his students holding hands, and he helps people with their sinus and back problems, their migraines. Like, look at what his touch does to these people. Look at this clip right now.
Rada u grad I pomažem ljudima. Migrena, glavobolja, sinusi, problemi sa kičmom. Trudim se 50-50.
And if that didn't manage to convince you, he became a Guinness World Record holder back in 1981 when he touched a few thousand volts. He also heated water to 97 degrees Celsius in the record time of 1 minute and 37 seconds. And no one knows how he has this power, how the electricity entered him and never left, how he controls it, or how he hasn't died from it yet. We just have no idea. But I would love to be like a walking appliance. It would save me so much money in electricity.
In at number 9, the Paulding Light. A small light that appears in a valley outside of Paulding, Michigan. This has been a mystery that has been puzzling investigators since the 1960s.
It almost looks like a flame, man.
How it flickers?
Yeah, it looks like a flame out there.
Look, it's red on it now.
It's coming real close.
Yep, you see it? It's going red now.
Some believe it's a ghost, while others claim it could be some sort of geological activity or even some natural gases. The light appears in the same spot almost every night, and of course there are tons of myths and legends surrounding the light. Some claim it's the light of a railroad brakeman who was killed while trying to stop an oncoming train from colliding with a car stuck on the tracks. Others claim it's a grandparent looking for a lost grandchild using a lantern that needs constant relighting, which is why the light seems to come and go. In 2010, the Paulding light was featured on the show Fact or Faked, Paranormal Files, who couldn't come up with a reasonable explanation for the random light.
At number 8, we have the disappearance of Frederick Valentich. On the 21st of October 1978, Australian pilot Frederick Valentich was doing a 125 nautical mile training flight. Now, the 20-year-old had no idea that that would be the last flight of his career. Known as a flying saucer enthusiast, Frederick radioed Melbourne air traffic control saying this:
"Is there any known traffic below 5,000 feet?
No known traffic.
Seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000 feet."
Now, if you didn't understand what he said and it's unclear, he's asking if there's any known traffic below 5,000 feet. They respond saying no known traffic. He then claimed there was an unidentified aircraft that was following him at 4,500 feet, which clearly wasn't a plane. It was illuminated by 4 bright landing lights and seemed to be moving at quite a fast speed. He then reported that it seemed to be approaching him from the east and that maybe the pilot was pranking him. The craft started orbiting above him, and that's when Frederick started experiencing engine problems. Now have a listen to the last few things he said in this transmission before contact was lost.
It's not an aircraft, it's hovering, and it's not an aircraft.
Search parties were sent out and covered 1,000 square miles around the perimeter, yet he was never found. The last thing he says is it's not an airplane, and then contact just gets lost. Like, where did you go? Were you abducted by aliens?
At lucky number 7, Dale Kerstetter. This mystery is exactly that because no one knows the answers to anything, really. September 12, 1987, Kerstetter started his weekend shift as a security guard at the Corning Glassworks plant in Bradford, Pennsylvania. When another security guard arrived the next morning to relieve Kerstetter of his shift, Dale was nowhere to be found. $250,000 of platinum pipe was also missing. However, Kerstetter's truck was still in the parking lot, and after the police were called to investigate, they were stumped. The keys to the truck were still in the ignition. Kerstetter, a heavy smoker, left behind a full carton of cigarettes. The only thing missing was his .22 caliber pistol. What's even more interesting is Dale's lunchbox was full, and upon reviewing security footage, about 10 minutes into Kerstetter's shift, a masked man is seen approaching the back of the plant. Kerstetter is seen walking up to him and then looked directly at the camera. The two men were never seen again. To this day, some believe Kerstetter was part of a heist, while others think he was coerced into the crime. He was looking at the camera as a signal of asking for help. Kerstetter had 6 kids and 2 grandchildren at the time of his disappearance. No one has seen or heard from him since that night, and many are still wondering what really happened to Dale Kerstetter.
Now at number 6 is the sand geysers. So everyone knows about water geysers. They're out here going to Iceland and chilling in those hot geyser baths and whatnot. Nothing new, I wish I could do that. But back in 2008, in the eastern city of Al Asa in Saudi Arabia, a sand geyser just appeared out of nowhere. The sand was coming out and reached 9 meters in vertical length, but no one was able to explain how the phenomenon was happening. Several Armaco geological teams went to the site to get to the bottom of it, but they simply couldn't. Some claim it could have been because of an earthquake tremor, since some sand volcanoes form during large earthquakes, but 11 years later they're still clueless about the real origins of the sand geyser.
Halfway through our list at number 5, the Cowboy Bandit. This one is insane because this guy somehow has been eluding the police for over 30 years. It started back in 1987 on September 19th, when a man entered a bank in Spokane, Washington and robbed them of $100,000. The man who robbed the bank was described as wearing glasses, a cowboy hat, and cowboy boots. When he pulled the gun on the teller asking to be taken to the vault, he also revealed a police scanner, making it clear he'll know if anyone calls for the police. After completing his first robbery, the Cowboy Bandit would go on to rob about a dozen banks total, even being captured on camera at some of them. Although it took a while to get the bandit on camera, while he was robbing a bank, one of the tellers set off a bill trap, which is located under some of the bills the tellers were handing over to the bandit during a robbery. This not only notified the police, but also activated the bank's cameras. Still, even though he was caught on camera, to this day, law enforcement have not been able to find the Cowboy Bandit.
At number 4 is the max headroom interruption. Now I feel like many people have seen this signal interruption that happened back in November of 1987 already, but we're going to show it again. The signal intrusion happened at about 9 PM during the sportscast news on WGN-TV and lasted about 28 seconds. The second intrusion happened during Doctor Who and that lasted about 90 seconds. It's been 30 years now and the hijackers behind the interruption are still unknown, and honestly the whole thing was just really creepy. The person in the video is wearing a Max Headroom mask and sunglasses with this buzzing sound in the background. In the first intrusion he's just swaying from side to side, bobbing his head up and down in front of this metallic striped background. In the second one the person actually talks, saying he's a freaking nerd, heeing away, he starts humming and singing a song and seems like he's on some kind of high level of drugs. He goes on to say, I just made a giant masterpiece for all the greatest world newspaper nerds, and I mean he's not wrong. 30 years later we're still talking about it, trying to figure out who it was.
In at number 3, Leah Rowland. At around 10:30 AM on March 20th, 1997, Leah Rowland was working as the manager of a gas station in Nebraska. The mother of 2 had just gotten promoted the day before and didn't think twice when a red Pontiac Ram pulled in to get some gas. The man in the red car walked into the gas station without shoes on and sweatpants rolled up to his knees. He waited for a mother and her daughter to leave the store and then approached the counter. Leah was instructed to hand over the money in the cash register, which she did, a total of $150. She was then told to lay on the ground. Complying with everything the robber said, Leah wasn't expecting him to shoot her 3 times, twice in the arm and once in the head, killing her instantly. The suspect then took off with the money, some soda, a pack of cigarettes, a lighter, and the gas he filled his car up with. Although there was surveillance footage of the entire crime, to this day, Leah's killer has never been found.
Now at number 2 is the Hampton Court Palace ghost. Now this grand estate was the home of Henry VIII and all his 6 wives and all their kids. And I feel like I learned about this guy in history at primary school more than I learned about anyone. It was a tie between him and both world wars, so I mean that's saying something. So the staff at the palace had the alarm go off, which meant the fire doors were open, but when they rushed to check there was nothing there. But in the footage you can see the doors opening even though no one's physically opening them, and then a man appears out of nowhere in medieval clothing and leaves through the doors.
You don't see the doors actually being pushed open by hand. Figure strides forward and slams them shut. As you can see, and close-ups have shown that it appears to be dressed in medieval clothes, similar to what Henry VIII would have worn.
Now no one saw any person come in and out of the building, yet the footage shows otherwise, and it looks like a skinnier version of Henry VIII, to be honest. Like maybe the afterlife made him skinnier. A good diet plan though.
Taking the top spot on our list at number 1, Bigfoot. Now you most likely already know the story here, but for those that don't, well, it's quite an interesting one. Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson filmed what some say is a real-life Bigfoot and others claim to be a hoax way back in 1967. The story goes the 2 men were searching for Bigfoot. Patterson claimed to have seen large footsteps earlier in the week and convinced Gimlin to go on a journey with him. When the 2 returned to the area where Patterson had originally found the prints, they were washed away due to rain. Still, the 2 men trekked deep into the woods on horseback. Then out of nowhere, Patterson's horse started jumping around, and then they saw it. Bigfoot on the other side of a creek. Patterson reached for his camera and started to record, but as he got closer, he tripped on some sticks. The noise got the attention of Bigfoot, who made eye contact with the men and then kept walking deeper into the woods, as you could see on the footage.
When I first saw her, she was standing upright. I thought, you know, this is unreal.
To this day, there's still a debate about whether or not the footage is real, and Gimlin doesn't seem to care to make people believe him. He knows what he saw on that day.
Starting off this countdown, we have Yuki Onishi. Her case is often referred to as the girl that vanished into thin air, and you'll understand why in a second. On April 29th, 2005, 5-year-old Yuki was out celebrating Greenery Day with her mother. Greenery Day is a national holiday in Japan meant to appreciate nature. On this day, people often go and dig up bamboo shoots as part of the celebration, and that's what Yuki and her mom were doing along with 60 other people. After Yuki showed her mom the first shoot that she found, she ran off to find more. 20 minutes later, her mom realized that Yuki wasn't with all the other diggers. That's when the search began. When they couldn't find her, the police were called and police dogs came to sniff out the scene. This is where it gets strange. All the police dogs followed her scent to the middle of the forest where her scent just stopped. This made it seem like she vanished into thin air from that spot. Sadly, Yuki has never been found and we don't know what happened to her or where she disappeared to. Moving on to number 9, we have the Pyramid Mystery. If you're a fan of the lost city of Atlantis, then this might be the mystery for you. There is a city that lies sunken underwater just off the coast of the Japanese island Yonaguni. Many believe that the city is around 5,000 years old. There are complete pyramids, ruins of castles, structures etched with faces, and rock sculptures that look like animals, all underwater. It's theorized that a terrible earthquake caused the city to be engulfed by water, but to this day, we don't know the true origins of this mysterious underwater city. Moving on at number 8, we have the man with 21 faces. In the 1980s in Japan, a group who called themselves the Mystery Man with 21 Faces stocked supermarkets with cyanide-filled candy. It all started when they kidnapped Katsuhisa Izaki, the president of a major company that was famous for selling sweets. They kidnapped him from his home and demanded a ransom of 1 billion yen. Thankfully, he escaped. But that was just the beginning. They continued by targeting other companies and by putting cyanide-laced chocolates on supermarket shelves. They also wrote several taunting letters to the police. To this day, no one knows who they were. The case was closed in February of 2000 and no arrests were ever made. Making our way down the list at number 7, we have the chain suicides. Okay, this one is a super mysterious case. Between June and July of 1992, 5 people all committed suicide in Kumatori, Osaka. 3 of the people were friends, and apparently several months prior to their death, 2 of their other friends died in what was deemed as accidental deaths. All 7 of these deaths happened within 0.7 miles from each other. Now, what's weird is how the deaths look like staged suicides. One person was hanging from a tree, but police couldn't find what the person stood on to reach the tree. And then one girl had a stab wound to the neck and chest, which police say is odd. Lastly, some of these victims all reported that they were being stalked prior to their death. Although we don't know who committed these crimes or why, it seems like the group of friends were targeted and then killed. In our 6th spot, we have Body in the Bag. On April 21st, 1996, a group of students were headed home from school when they saw a bag in a bamboo grove. They had seen the bag there before. In fact, it was said to have been there for about a month. They decided to finally see what's inside. When they poked it with a stick, a human hand fell out of it. The bag had the remains of a middle-aged man shoved into it. He had bruises all over his waist and some of his teeth were missing. Police were unable to identify the man or figure out what happened to him. To this day, police keep a sign near the area where the man's body was found, with hopes that someone will be able to identify him. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Tsunami family murder. On April 28th, 1995, at around 2:30 a.m., the house belonging to 70-year-old Haru Heiko and 67-year-old Midori Tsunami was set on fire. Police later found their bodies on the 1st floor. They were both decapitated. Haruki had a knife in his stomach and Midori had stab marks all over her body. What sucks is that the fire destroyed most of the evidence in the house, but it's said that the killer stayed in the house for at least 5 hours after they killed them. Police still don't know who committed this crime, and after years of searching, they still haven't been able to locate the couple's heads. Coming in at number 4, we have Yoko Yoshida. On September 29th, 2000, a worker at a Tokyo apartment complained to management about a bad odor coming from one of the apartments. When they went inside, 28-year-old Yoko Yoshida was found dead laying on her bed. Now, Yoko was a well-known manga artist. Autopsy reports claim that she had been strangled to death and had been laying there for 10 days or more before they found her. What's odd about her case is that 3 million yen was found in her wallet. Police believe that Yoko knew who her killer was. Maybe she was killed out of jealousy because of her success. Another theory is that since she was a well-known manga artist, that she was killed by a crazed fan, but we still don't truly know. In our 3rd spot, we have the 42nd disappearance. On March 7th, 1989, 4-year-old Shinya Matsuka was said to be kidnapped from her front lawn. Shinya and her family were returning home from a walk. She was outside on the front yard alone for about 40 seconds while her parents carried her younger sibling inside. When they returned, she was gone. It all happened so fast. Their life completely changed in that 40 seconds. Over the years, people have claimed to have seen her, but police have made nothing of these leads. This remains one of the most mysterious cases in Japan. In our 2nd spot, we have the money heist. On December 10th, 1968, a man dressed as a police officer managed to successfully steal more than 294 million yen. So on this day, a car belonging to a bank was transporting that money to another location. That's when a man dressed as a police officer stopped the truck. He then told the workers that their branch manager's home was just blown up, and he had reason to believe that this truck was rigged with explosives as well. The police officer crawled under the vehicle to search for a bomb, and he set off a flare that caused smoke and flames to emerge under the vehicle. The workers panicked and backed away, thinking that the car was going to explode. This allowed the officer to hop into the car and drive away with the money. Police had no suspects, but it's thought that he was a corrupt cop or son of a cop. But these are just theories. They were never able to catch this man. In December of 1975, the statute of limitations for the case passed. So even if a man did come forward admitting to the crime, they wouldn't be able to arrest him for it. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Miyazawa family massacre. On December 30th, 2000, the Miyazawa family, consisting of Miyakio, Yasuko, and their children, Nina and Ri, were all stabbed or strangled to death. It's said that the killer entered their home through the upstairs window. On December 31st, Yasuko's mother visited the home and found her daughter, along with her family, dead. However, the killer has never been identified. Now, this case is truly frustrating. There was so much evidence and DNA left behind by the killer, yet they were still never able to catch him. Apparently, the killer stayed in the house several hours after killing the family. He used the bathroom and didn't flush the toilet. He ate their food from the kitchen and used their computer and even left behind his clothes. But still, he was never caught. And police officers don't even know why he killed the family in the first place. But there are a couple of theories. One is that they were killed by a motorcycle game when Mikio apparently told them off for being too loud several days before. Another theory is that they were killed by a serial killer that would use Japan's train service to get around and commit different crimes. And the last theory is that they were killed by an American soldier. Sadly, to this day, we truly don't know who the monster behind this ruthless crime is. And that's all for today's video. Let me know in the comments below what mystery was your favorite. Also, let me know of any other unsolved cases that have left you shocked.
Coming in at number 10, we have antimatter, one of the mysteries of the scientific world. I'm sure anyone who has read a sci-fi novel or watched enough Star Trek has heard the word antimatter. Well, what is it? That much we actually do know. It's the mirror image of an atom. It has the complete opposite charge. It would be like if you met your bizarro version of yourself. But now get this, what if when you met your bizarro self, the mirror energy of you two touching each other caused you both to disintegrate? Yeah, that doesn't sound very fun. Antimatter and normal matter destroy each other. So we definitely don't want to head to a parallel universe that is all antimatter. We would vanish faster than a hot dog in front of Joey Chestnut.
Of the Nathan's Famous Hot Dog Eating Contest. It's been something else to get this off the ground.
Now, the mystery here is a few things. Where does antimatter come from? Well, that we don't really know yet. There's a few theories, but nobody knows for sure. Another question is, how do we make it? And you're probably wondering, why would we want to make something like that? Well, because when matter and antimatter come in contact, they produce energy, and we could potentially harness that energy for future fuel.
Coming in at number 9 are the human statues. So at the start of the 1900s, there was this condition that started going around in Europe that had everyone perplexed. It was dubbed encephalitis lethargica, or EL, and it spread around the world pretty quickly in epidemic-like fashion. Kind of hits close to home, doesn't it? But weirdly enough, I'd say what we're going through is still a lot better than what they went through. People who got it would essentially become frozen. Their minds would be fully aware and active, but their bodies just couldn't move. So imagine being awake during a coma. That's what it was like. The disease attacks your brain and will result in a headache, high fever, catatonia, sleep inversion, delayed physical and mental responses, and so on. Of the 5 million people who got it, a third died while half the survivors became statues. They could barely talk or move their eyes and would just be motionless still for days, weeks, or even years on end. These people never even went back to how they used to be. The exact cause of the disease is still unknown till this day. Doctors have theorized it could be brain inflammation caused by a really rare type of streptococcus that mutated. Guys, you don't even want to know how many takes that took for me to say. The whole thing is weird. It vanished as quickly as it came with no new cases until the 50s. Where did it come from? Where did it go? Where did it come from? Cotton Eye Joe.
Coming in at number 8, we have Where's Jimmy Hoffa's Body? Jimmy Hoffa was one of the most influential men in American history. He rounded up many of the labor workers in America who weren't protected by their employers, and he started up the Teamsters Union. This was one of the first major steps in bringing unions into the working class people of America. This gave the American workforce power over their employers like they had never seen before, and Hoffa was at the head of this power. And as they say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's a lot of speculation on when this started, but Hoffa started working with organized crime. Now, he might have been working with them from the jump, or not until he got into power, but as his rise continued, he started to make moves that weren't in the best interest of the mob, and they saw this as a major insult. Hoffa was taken out, and his body was dumped somewhere, but nobody knows. This has been a mystery since the 70s, and I doubt we'll ever get to the bottom of this. The famous mob hitman, the Iceman, made claims that he was the one who took out Hoffa, but he might have just wanted a last feather in his cap, as this was something he said right before he was sent to execution.
Filling our number 7 slot is Paula Jean Weldon. So back in the 40s, Paula was a student at Bennington College in Vermont, and it was just a regular girl next door. You know, she was sociable, smart, had a part-time job, liked hiking. Look at me, I just made her Tinder bio for her. No, don't joke about the dead, amen. Sorry. Now one day she decided to walk a portion of the long trail, which was a few miles away from her campus. She finished her shift at work, went, and she didn't pack any extra clothes or money. She didn't even take a bag since it was just a hike. People just assumed she'd come back in a few hours. Paula went with a friend half the way and then hitchhiked the rest, and when she got there, a group of hikers recalled running into her and Paula asking them some questions. She was on the trail late in the afternoon, so darkness was approaching ASAP Rocky, and the hours passed. Something happened out there because Paula never came back to her dorm. Her roommate assumed she was just at the library, but after she hadn't returned by the next morning, she notified college administrators. The search began and started on campus, and then eventually spread to Long Trail, and the college was even closed for a few days, and hundreds of volunteers helped search. Even air searchers found nothing. But the weirdest part of this whole case was when her dad heard about her disappearance, he bizarrely disappeared himself for 36 hours. Apparently, Paula's family life was troubled, and his weird behavior made him a prime suspect. People assumed Paula had gotten lost and died on the trail, but a waitress in Massachusetts claimed she had served an agitated woman that matched Paula's description. 15 years later, a lumberjack said he had followed Paula into the woods and knew where her body was, and then admitted he was joking. Learn what humor is, mate, that's not a good joke. Her body was never found and her disappearance never solved.
Coming in number 6, we have the Havana Sonic attack. Do you think world governments are working on some secret devices to mess with people? Well, that might be what happened here. For this story, we need to shoot back to the year 2016 and go over to the American Embassy in Havana. If you were working over there, you would expect the entire experience to be sunbathing and drinking mojitos until you have to be carried back to your room by the pool boy. But instead, 26 Americans and 13 Canadians had to go to the hospital because they all started feeling unwell, and none of this had anything to do with being hungover. All of them had the same symptoms, which were all centered around hearing problems, nausea, nosebleeds, vomiting, and a whole bunch of other issues with the head. At first, no one knew what the hell was going on, and then people started to speculate that this was the Russians testing out some sort of sonic disruptor device that messed everyone up, because many people said they heard a high-pitched noise before they started coming down with the sickness. Wow. The reason of this strange happening was never solved.
Coming in at number 5 are the lead-masked men. In August of 1966, 2 corpses were found on Vintem Hill in Rio de Janeiro. The bodies were wearing suits, waterproof coats, and had lead masks over their eyes, which is odd, yes, we can all agree. Along with their bodies, police found towels, water bottles, and a notebook with the instructions that read as follows: 4:30 be at agreed place, 6:30 swallow capsules, after effect protect metals, wait for mask signal. The men were identified as Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, and after hunting down their families, they were told the 2 men said they were going out to get work supplies, but instead boarded a bus and headed straight to Niterói. The 2 stopped at a bar in town where the waitress claimed Miguel seemed especially nervous and was constantly checking his watch. No one knows what was in those capsules that both men swallowed, and the toxicology report was also inconclusive. The lead masks also made no sense, like if they were protecting protecting the men from radiation, that's fine, but what radiation? To where?
Coming at number 4, we have what did Jesus look like? This has been debated for a long time. The images of him that we see in most representations don't really make sense to what everyone else looked like in the area. Some people speculate that he could have been black. Other people say that he could have looked more Middle Eastern. There has been some evidence uncovered that point to the town that he might have grown up in, and it would be hard to believe that the dude was white. Also, does God even have a skin tone, or is he just a massive ball of energy that is completely translucent and all-knowing? So who knows? Maybe he takes after his dad, but maybe he takes after his mom. But will we ever get to know what this dude really looked like? Probably not, because we have 0 time machines and there was 0 photography back then.
Now at number 3 is Julia Wallace. Now Julia was a British housewife married to a man named William, and that's all the backstory you need. How British can you get? Now on the 19th of January 1931, William went to his chess club for a game with the lads, as you do, you know, having a cheeky chess game with the lads. But when he got there, he was told someone had left a message for him. The message was from a man called Qualtrough, and William had no clue who that was, but the message told him to go to 25 Menlove Gardens East. And for some bizarre reason, William listened to this complete stranger's instructions. Like, why would you listen to someone you don't even know, especially when their name is freaking Qualtrough? Either way, he went to the address the next day to find out it wasn't a real address after spending an hour trying to find it. Well, no shit, William. When he finally got home after walking, thinking he was a complete fool, he found Julia's beaten, bloody body lying in their parlor. Shocked and horrified, William didn't know what to do, but he also didn't have enough time to gather himself because he was arrested there and then. It's like the whole thing was very much a setup. Police thought he had left himself a fake message since the call from Qualtrough came from a telephone box only a few hundred yards away from his chess club. He was sentenced to death, but thankfully his case was brought up and overturned by the jury. But who on earth was this Qualtrough person, and why did he kill or she kill Julia?
Coming in at number 2, we have what was before the Big Bang. So we know that the Big Bang happened, or at least we think we know, because that seems to be the most logical answer as to how the universe was created. Either that, or we're all just sitting in a petri dish right now and some dude is looking at us through a microscope. But let's say that this theory is correct and the universe was born out of a massive cosmic event that blasted out energy so hard it stretched out in every direction. But there had to be something before that. Did time and consciousness just start at that moment? And there was nothing before that? But what made the Big Bang? The universe is constantly expanding, but will it reach a point where it starts to retract and then collapse back onto itself and become so dense it explodes outwards again? Are we going through an endless cycle of destruction and creation? I don't know, dude. I'm a host on a top 10 channel. I'm just as confused as you are.
I'm actually not confused, and I know exactly what he's talking about. And finally, at number 1 is Susan Powell. So this case has so many plot twists I was struggling to keep up. So Susan disappeared on the 6th of December back in 2009, and she's still missing or dead, we don't really know. She was married to a man named Joshua, and the couple had 2 kids together, but they also had plenty of intense marital problems. Susan and the kids went to church on the 6th, and the whole family were reported missing the next day. Police broke into the house expecting to find something, but all they found were 2 fans blowing a newly cleaned couch dry. Why is it newly cleaned? Cleaning out bloodstains there, Joshua? Now, he told police he had taken the boys camping while Susan was asleep and had just returned that day to find her randomly missing. Now, here's where things just stop adding up. Why the hell would you take your kids camping after midnight during the winter when you're meant to be at work a few hours later? Like, it doesn't sound fun for anyone involved. Not only that, but when the couple initially got married, they lived in Joshua's family home, where his dad Stephen grew a huge infatuation with Susan, following her around, recording her, stealing her underwear, etc. It got pretty freaking creepy, I'm not gonna lie to you. She also wrote in her will that her death may not be an accident even if it looks like one. Who says that other than someone about to get offed by someone they know? When police started investigating, they found no evidence of the camp Joshua described. They found Susan's phone in his van, they found Susan's blood on the floor of the house, and at this point Josh was looking like the culprit 100%. When police spoke to one of the sons, he said that the camping trip did happen, but their mum had gone with them but hadn't come back with them. The other son kept drawing pictures of a van at daycare and kept saying mommy was in the trunk of the van. Josh tried to play the whole thing off by saying Susan was having an affair with someone someone and the two had run off to Brazil to be together, but that turned out to be false. Then Stephen, Joshua's dad, claimed the two had been in love right before she disappeared. Police arrested him after finding a bunch of child and tapes of girls that didn't know they were being filmed, including Susan herself. Her family were all sure Joshua had something to do with the disappearance, but the case remains unsolved because the body was never found.
Starting off this countdown, we have the USS Cyclops. On February 16th, 1918, the US Cyclops set out to Baltimore, Maryland from Rio. It was estimated to arrive on March 13th, but it never made it there. The ship and all the 306 members on board disappeared without a trace. The ship was never found, nor were any of the bodies. Now there's a lot of things here that don't make sense. For example, how could the biggest ship in the US Navy disappear without a trace? Number two, if they were in trouble, why didn't they send an SOS signal? And why were there no pieces of wreckage found? As described by the Santa Fe magazine, they said, and I quote, "Usually a wooden bucket or a cork life preserver identified as belonging to a lost ship is picked up after a wreck, but not so with the Cyclops. There was just nothing left behind." It was a very weird and eerie case. Moving on at number 9, we have the Flannan Isle Lighthouse Keepers. On December 7th, 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers took their spot in Flannan Isle to do a 2-week shift. However, when the boat returned to collect them after their shift, they were nowhere to be found. They disappeared under very weird circumstances. For example, when they got to the lighthouse, it was locked. Inside, the clock had randomly stopped working. All their gear was left inside and there was a meal on the table ready to be eaten. However, their bodies were never found. One other eerie thing would be the lighthouse keeper's journal entries. In one entry, he wrote about how one keeper was acting weird and all quiet. The other keeper was apparently crying for some reason. Now, some believe that the men were outside trying to secure something and then they got blown over the cliff, or a wave maybe washed them out to sea. Maybe they ran out in a panic and that's why they left their gear inside. Whereas others believe the men were killed and tossed out to sea, or even kidnapped by aliens. But whatever truly happened to them is still unknown. In our 8th spot, we have the Isdal woman. In 1970, a mysterious woman was found burned to death in Ice Valley, Norway. We don't know who she is, and it seems like someone didn't want us to find out. Why? Well, all the labels were cut off of her clothes, and distinctive marks were scraped off of her belongings. It gets weirder when police found that she had a number of fake passports and disguises like wigs. She also had notebook entries that were all in code, so it may be that she was some sort of foreign spy. But to this day, police haven't cracked this case. There have been some breakthroughs over the years, but nothing solid to help us identify this woman. We don't know what happened to her, what she was doing, and who her killer is. In our 7th spot, we have the Watcher. In 2014, a family bought a $1.3 million home in New Jersey. Little did they know that the home came with a lot of baggage, including a creepy stalker who called themselves the Watcher. Before even moving in, they began to receive letters from the Watcher. These letters talked about what the family was doing, proving to them that someone was truly watching them and stalking their every move. Some things that this Watcher said in the letters were, and I quote, "This home has been the subject of my family for decades. I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming." And then another letter referred to the new owner's children and asked, have they found out what's in the walls yet? Which made the family terrified, thinking that there was some listening device or, security cameras hidden in the walls. The family ended up hiring investigators and set up cameras, but the Watcher was never caught. As a result, they decided to move out of their home and sell it for a loss. But what about the new buyers? Like, do you have to put in house comes with creepy stalker in the house listing or what? I'm thinking that this was just some ploy for a guy to get $1 million home for cheap. Like he torments everyone who lives there so no one wants to buy the house, and then someone sells it for cheap and he gets it for a steal. Did I just solve this case? I think I did. Coming in at number 6, we have Septic Tank Sam. Septic Tank Sam is the name given to an unidentified man found in a septic tank in Alberta, Canada. So the year was 1977 and a couple went out to an abandoned farmhouse to find a pump for their septic tank. However, when they opened the tank, they found a decomposed body of a man. According to police, it was was a very gruesome and sadistic crime scene. The man had been tied, tortured, burned, and shot before being dumped in the tank. The remains were in such bad condition that the examiner took months to figure out if the body belonged to a man or a woman. Eventually, it was discovered to be of a man. His teeth records were then sent to over 800 dentists, but there were no matches whatsoever. It's a very sad case, and I hope one day we can figure out who this man is and who his killer was. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the man from Torrid. This case is fairly creepy and might prove that time travel or multiple dimensions are real. So in July of 1954, a well-dressed man arrived at the Haneda airport in Tokyo, Japan. Nothing was odd about this man until he was questioned by the customs officer. The man then claimed that he was from Torrid, and it was his 3rd time visiting Japan from his country. However, there is no country named Torrid. His documents, like his passport and IDs, were all authentic, but it said that he was from this mysterious place called Torrid. They eventually took him into custody for further interrogation, thinking that he was lying and he's some criminal. He was then placed in a hotel room that had only 1 entry and 1 exit point. That was monitored by 2 guards. But somehow, this man mysteriously vanished. The thing was, he was put up in a room high up in a hotel with no balcony. There's no way he could have escaped. Now, some people think that Torrid is a real country, but just in a different universe, and that this man somehow passed through a parallel dimension and ended up at the airport, the wrong airport. Whereas others believe that he is a time traveler who mistakenly landed at the airport. In our 4th spot, we have the UFOologist. Who here believes in aliens? If you do, hit that like button. Well, Max Spears certainly did. Max Spears was a ufologist as well as a conspiracy theorist. In July of 2016, he went to Poland to attend a conference to speak about secret military programs. On July 16th, he was at a friend's place when he passed out on her couch and stopped breathing. Here's the scary part. Just days before his death, Max told his mom, and I quote, "If anything happens to me, investigate." He also told her that he felt like he was going to get murdered. But the police officer that investigated the scene said he died of natural causes, and no examination or further investigation was conducted. Apparently, he overdosed on anti-anxiety drugs. But many people believe that there's more to this story than just that, especially since he dies only a couple of days after he said he was going to get murdered. Also, he was closing in on details about UFOs. Did someone kill him over this? It's all pretty freaky, am I right? Coming in at number 3, we have the double identity. So once upon a time, there was a man named Lawrence, or Larry Batter. He was a cookware salesman from Ohio. But on March 15th, 1957, he went out for a fishing trip and never returned home. It was deemed that he got lost at sea. He was declared dead in 1960. Here's the thing though, after Larry's disappearance, a man named John Fritz appeared in Nebraska. He became a radio station announcer and soon a local TV personality. John Fritz looked exactly like Larry Batter. In 1965, someone from Ohio recognized John as Larry, but John had no idea who Larry was and no memory of his life. Psychiatrists even examined him and deemed that he was not lying. But after running tests, his fingerprints were the same as Larry's. So John was Larry. I know, it's confusing. So here's a couple of theories. A, he faked his own death and started a new life in Nebraska. Number 2, he suffered from dissociative amnesia and genuinely forgot who he was. Sadly, he passed away in 1966 and his case was never solved. Or maybe Larry had a twin brother. Ever think of that? Come on, guys. In our 2nd spot, we have the Oakville rain blobs. In August of 1994, something weird fell from the skies in Oakville, Washington. At first, people thought it was just rain, but no, it was definitely not water. It was like these strange, clear blobs. One person reported that it was very mushy, almost like jello. This mysterious substance rained down 6 times over a 3-week period. And guess what? Anyone exposed to that substance became very ill. One resident had difficulty breathing, blurred vision, intense nausea, and vertigo. Another resident said that everyone in town contracted a flu-like illness that lasted 2 to 3 months. And sadly, several cats and dogs exposed to the substance became ill and passed away. Upon inspecting the substance, it apparently contained human white blood cells. But to this day, No one knows what it is or what caused it. And in our #1 spot, we have the toxic lady. This next story is going to shock you. It's probably the craziest one on this list. So on February 19th, 1994, at 8:15 at night, a woman named Gloria Ramirez was wheeled into the emergency room in a hospital in the Southern California city of Riverside. She was only 31 years old, but her blood pressure was very low. She could barely breathe and her heart was beating very fast. Medical staff started helping her right away. Things got weird. For starters, her body was covered in a weird oily sheen and her breath had a fruity garlicky scent to it. The blood then took some of her blood and realized weird particles floating in her blood. The weirdest part, after taking her blood, they noticed a weird smell emitting from the blood and her body. After getting a whiff of her blood, hospital staff became very ill and started dropping. In the end, 23 of the 37 emergency room staff became sick from Gloria. 5 had to be hospitalized for the rest of the night. 1 was severely ill and spent 2 weeks in the ICU. Hence why they gave her the name the Toxic Lady. Sadly, they weren't able to save Gloria's life. Now, what was wrong with Gloria and how come she made so many people sick with her blood? Well, there are a couple of theories out there. One is that Gloria used something called DMSO to help her cervical cancer. DMSO is toxic, but back in the day, it was marketed as a cure-all, like it will cure your pain, anxiety, you name it. Now, when the MDSO is exposed to oxygen, it converts to dimethyl sulfate. As a gas, dimethyl sulfate vapors destroy cells in people's eyes, lungs, and mouth. When it gets in the body, it can cause convulsions, delirium, you name it. Although Gloria's family denies that she used DMSO, this is one explanation to why others got sick when exposed to her.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Treasure of Lima. Back when the Spanish had colonized most of Central and South America, they were going to great lengths to collect all the treasures they could find. They wanted to make one of the largest collections of wealth the world has ever seen, and they managed to put together a pretty good pile until revolutions started popping up all over the place. The island of Lima held a massive treasure, and to save it from falling into the hands of the people who were revolting, the Spanish government made a plan to move all the goods to Mexico. This shipment of goods contained several gold statues, rare jewels and metals, and even just straight up cash. Now here's where things get murky. Some people say that the treasure made its way to Mexico. Other people say the treasure was hijacked by William Thomas and his men took the treasure to Cocos Island, but they were arrested and executed before they could come back to claim it. Others say the Mexicans struck a deal with Thomas and now the treasure is hidden. Coming in at number 9, we have the crystal skulls. One of the strangest artifacts that has ever been uncovered in Mexico are the crystal skulls. They are extremely rare and well crafted, and they could have just been pieces of art that were commonly traded for goods back in the 7th and 8th century. This was when the Mayans were a prominent civilization in Mexico. Now, the mystery behind these skulls mixes into a few different areas. First, no one really knows who made them. They are so rare and they are so dispersed. Some of them are even being found in southern countries like Belize. It's unclear how many people had the skill to make such a piece. Also, there is a mystical element to this. There is a legend that says once all 13 skulls are found, it will bring the end of the world. So I guess we should probably stop looking for these things. Coming in at number 8, we have the Dead Zone. Yeah, anything that catches that nickname can't bring something happy. You don't call a place the Dead Zone because it's full of candy and sunshine, unless you're trying to lure kids in there so you can eat them. The Dead Zone is an area in the state of Durango. For whatever reason, it's almost impossible to get any sort of radio waves to pass through this area. If you get lost in there, you might be stuck in this desert until the blazing heat takes you to a dehydrated grave. Now, this has baffled scientists for years, and recently it has been chalked up to an electromagnetic disturbance, but there hasn't been enough research to verify this. Also, many people have made claims of seeing extraterrestrials in the area. Coming in at number 7, we have the death of Mario Amato. This is a wild case with a series of twists and turns. It starts off with two couples heading down from California to Mexico for a nice getaway. The year was 1992. The couples consisted of Mario and his girlfriend Paula, and his brother Joe and his girlfriend Debbie. They all arrived in Mexico at a condo in Rosarito Beach. The couples would be staying there for the weekend. The first night ended with Mario and Paula getting into a vicious argument, which eventually cooled down. The next day, Joe and Debbie were out, and Paula and Mario got into it again, and this time Mario was arrested. When Joe and Debbie came back to the house, no one was there, and Paula arrived later, but Mario was still missing. It was not long after this that the police arrived and told the three of them that Mario was dead. He had hung himself in jail. This was very suspicious, and after an autopsy, it would seem that Mario had a serious injury to his liver before he was hung, and there was a lot of evidence showing that he was murdered, but the police closed the investigation and called it a suicide. Coming in at number 6, we have Where Are the Aztec Rulers? When you go back through time, you can find a lot of the burial sites of ancient rulers. If you go snooping around a pyramid, you might find a sarcophagus that has some old dude who's mummified and he's stuck in there. But the thing with the Aztec rulers is that none of them have been found. Now, this could be for a few reasons. Some people speculate that the Aztecs used to burn their leaders and spread their ashes after they died. But there could be a chance that the remains were kept somewhere sacred and we haven't discovered it yet. Coming in at number 5, we have the Mexican Mothman. A little over a decade ago, there were some very strange reports coming from the town of La Genta, Mexico. People had claimed that they saw a massive winged creature that looked as if it might have been part human. People from all over the city were saying that something that was around 9 feet tall, covered head to toe in hair, and had a massive wingspan was flying over people and following them. The explanation for these sightings has never been solved. This could have been a hoax put together by some local kids who were trying to freak people out, or did Mothman actually work his way down to Mexico for a little visit? Coming in at number 4, we have the Island of Dolls. One of the creepiest things that I have ever seen. The Island of Dolls is a famous tourist attraction that is deep in the jungle close to Mexico City. The former owner of this island found the body of a dead girl who had drowned in a river close by, along with her doll that was floating next to her. He took the doll and hung it up to appease the spirit of the girl. For the next few years, he hung up more dolls to keep the girl's ghost happy, until one day when the man was found dead. He drowned in the exact same spot as the girl. No one knows how he died in that exact spot. Coming in at number 3, we have Gordon Collins. Another story of couples heading down to Mexico for a little trip. Maybe you should go in groups of 3 and then you'll be fine. Gordon, his girlfriend, and his 2 friends went down to Mexico for vacation. They were supposed to stay there for a week. One day they rented a boat and they went out to do some fishing, but a huge storm hit and 3 of their bodies were found dead in the water. It was thought that Gordon was also dead from the storm until a few days later when he was seen walking around the fishing village. His parents came down to find him, but after following a trail of sightings, he was nowhere to be found. Then he popped up in Cabo San Lucas. His parents chased him down again, and once again, he was nowhere to be found. After this, 70 sightings of him were reported, but he was never found by anyone looking for him. It's thought that he might have been suffering from amnesia. Coming in at number 2, we have Meja Island. How can you make a whole island disappear? Well, it seems like somehow someone did this. The Meja Island was apparently an island just off the coast of the Yucatan in the Atlantic Ocean. There are documents recording the location of this island that date back over 400 years, but in the 1970s, it would seem that the island existed no more. The location of where the island apparently was is now just an open area of ocean. Not even like the island sunk below sea level because of rising water levels. No, there's no trace of this island ever being in the area. There are rumors that the United States destroyed the island so they could travel through the area without breaking international charter laws, but if they did this, how did they do it? And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Chichen Itza. This is one of the most famous structures in the world, built by the ancient Mayan civilization. It stands as one of the wonders that will blow anyone's mind. This is a similar mystery akin to the pyramids. There are rooms inside Chichen Itza that are built so perfectly that you can hear into other rooms, and it's said high-ranking officials would wait in these rooms and eavesdrop on conversations so they could seem like they had godly knowledge. There's also a point at the front of the pyramid that produces an amazing echo response. When you clap at the front of this point, it sends out a noise that can be heard a kilometer in every direction. It's these amazing feats of ingenuity that make people wonder, how did they build it? I know a lot of you people think that aliens built the pyramids, and I know you guys know that I love conspiracy theories, but I'm going to go on a different angle. The mystery is, what technology did they have? Everything they built was so precise. We still have no idea how they did it. There are points in Chichen Itza that are lined up perfectly with the points of north, south, east, and west. So the question stands, how did they do it?